Yo, what's good, everybody? Today is November the 11th, 2025. Most gracious and Heavenly Father, we thank you, God, for yet another opportunity of prayer. Thank you, God, for the gift of life. God, we thank you, God, for loved ones. We thank you, God, for our families. We just thank you, God, for the men and women that have served this country, for our protections, for our freedoms. We want to salute them on this day. Oh, God, we ask you, God, that you will bless this broadcast, as well as tonight's guests, as well as the viewers as well and their families. Just ask you that you will watch it and keep over all of us during these turbulent times. We ask all these things in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Yo, what's good, everybody? Um, Thanks for tuning in. Um, we're going to see how this go. Look like I tried something new. I don't see my distortion or my pixelation problem that I've been having. So I'm excited about that. Um, I want to say congratulations to everybody that celebrated their born day on this previous week. It's particularly milestones. I'm at the age now. It seems like everybody's hitting that half a century mark. So salute to everybody that celebrated over the weekend. Um, Also want to offer my condolences to the Johnson family, my VPF family. Please keep them in prayer as we lost Elder Everett Johnson last week. He just had his homegoing service on today. So please keep Sister Phyllis as well as EJ and the rest of the family in your prayers. Um, Served he was an active member of the community in the city of Durham in North Carolina for quite a while. So heartfelt condolences goes out to them guys, and please keep them in your prayers. Um, it's been a great week of lost period. I posted about Lenny Wilkins. Lenny Wilkins passed away this week, and never got a chance to meet Lenny Wilkins, but I was just always fascinated by him. And then when I would watch different interviews, even way back in the '90s and whatnot, when he was still coaching, it was just something that drew me to Lenny. You know what I mean? You got certain, you know how it is, Sam. Like we got these certain male figures that we come across. Like John Thompson was another one. It was like, man, that it just seemed like it would be cool to just even be in a presence. And Lenny Wilkins always struck me as that. And then I'm at the age where a lot of it, hey, what's good, Jew? What's good, Crosby? Um, I'm at that age where when it came to Lenny Wilkins, a lot of it, I didn't see his playing career. So I just knew him primarily as a coach. But I'm a historian too of sports. So I like to go back and do my research. And then it really put things in perspective for me in terms of Lenny Wilkins when he was named to the 75 greatest players of all time. I'm like, hold up. Lenny Wilkins, the coach, like he's one of the top 75. I really got to go do my homework to see what type of player he was, and man, he was a great player. He was a great player, and that's what made me look it up when after he passed. Like we got to really take our hats off to Lenny Wilkins because Lenny Wilkins is a three-time Hall of Famer. He's in the Hall of Fame as a player, as a coach, and as an assistant coach. That's impeccable. That's like super duper crazy to me. Um, Oh yeah, everybody, y'all know who Sam is by now. Sam joining me tonight. It wasn't no particular topics tonight. You know what I mean? We missed last week, so we doing the first of the month freestyle. But I wanted to, just kind of talk about a few things. And Sam, what's good with you, bro? I can't hear you, Sam.
Just enjoying life, just blessed.
Yeah, that's the key word right there, man. We are definitely blessed. I tell people all the time, man. And I've been. It's something about I don't know what it is. It's something in particular for me with turning 50. Ever since I thought it was just my actual birthday, but ever since then I've been so uh, just reflective and appreciative. It seemed like every minute of every single day. Like I'm eternally grateful to be here. Like there's been times in my life where it's like I'm just existing. I'm actually happy to be here now, and it's like a new lease on life, man. Because I realize how often we take so much stuff for granted. You know what I mean? Whether it's oh yeah, I got to work this weekend, or I'm doing this next month, and this here and that there, and it's like People are leaving up out of here by the minute. It's crazy. So it just made me. It just makes me reflective and just want to be be appreciative for the things that God has blessed me with, for the people that He has placed in my lives, whether it was for a season, whether it was for a reason, long term, short term. I'm just real grateful, man, because it's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing. No matter what your financial situation may look like, no matter what your working situation may look like, the fact that you're able to watch this broadcast, or even if you feel pain, the fact that you feel pain lets you know that you're still alive. So each and every day, we all have something to be very grateful for, man. So with that being said, too, happy Veterans Day. I wanted to let you introduce you, Sam, in case you wanted to chime in on Lenny Wilkins. But like I say, man, Lenny, he had some great numbers. He had a great career as a player way before a coach. Um, and I really took a liking to him. I never forget. I want to say it was like 95, 96, when he became the all-time winningest coach at that particular time. You know, it was like to see this black man and then know that Red Auerbach had that record for so long and his tradition. To see Lenny, with the cigar, it's like, oh, this dude got some style about him. I really like that. But Lenny, he was definitely somebody to be reckoned with. And when I watch out, it was good, Dorothy. When I watched all the different tributes on social media this weekend toward him, like everything was highly spoken of, highly spoken. He was well spoken of, and even the clips that I could see him actually talking, he was like how Sam was talking about the last show in June. He was definitely about giving information out, making sure that we were aware of different things, what it was like to be a black man in America, the difference between our color tones, different things that he had to face, whether he was light skinned versus dark skinned, just appreciative for the education that he would share with people. I even watched Stephon Marbury. He was talking about how he was such a better man, becoming, having been coached by Lenny Wilkins, and I didn't realize until doing my own research that Lenny he's one of those guards from New York City. And we already know how we talked about, I don't know if you guys seen the documentary, The Point Guards, that was very well done, talking about the history of the guards from New York City. But then he made that cut too. So I'm like, hats off to him, man. Condolences to his family as well. Um, but we also today is actually Veterans Day. So I want to say salute to all the veterans, including you too, Sam, everybody that done served. Um, we appreciate you guys' services and everything that you did for our country. So many, it's too many to name, but rest in peace to my grandfather, who was a World War II vet, Roscoe Bennett Sr. Rest in peace to my uncle Charles, my uncle Charles, my uncle Roscoe Jr., who was a veteran as well, Bishop James H. Everett, everybody that just served, all my West Side classmates that have served over the years, all my family members, all my uncles, rest in peace, my uncle Griffithson. Um, just so many people, men and women too. Bev, who's a favorite of the show, salute to her as always. So many, but to all you guys, thank you guys for your service. Thank you guys for laying it all on the line, um, for our freedoms that we arguably don't always get, which is a whole different conversation. But nonetheless, we thank you guys for your service and whatnot. Um, and then another thing that got lost in Lenny Wilkins and uh, Elder Johnson passing away this week. I didn't really hear much about it, but Paul Tagliabue passed away this week too. I think it was the ninth or last week. I think over the weekend. I'm sorry, excuse me. But Paul Tagliabue, he was the commissioner of the NFL. Especially during my prime and Pete Rozelle, and it's like no commissioner is ever like really great in my opinion. David Stern, he was definitely gangster in the NBA, and changed the game forever. Took basketball to a global level. But by far, I think Paul Tagliabue, he did some astounding things for the game of football in his tenure, taking over for Pete Rozelle. Um, who is it now? Roger Goodell. Nobody seems to like him whatsoever. So Paul Tagliabue, yeah. But one of the things that I had did in my research right before I went live, when I was looking at his life and everything, shout out to Paul Tagliabue as well, because again he was a Jersey. I didn't realize he was from Jersey City, another Jersey cat. Um, so hats off to him. And another big thing that I read about and looking him up that was monumental, that I thought was noteworthy, was how I forgot which Super Bowl it was, but it was scheduled to be in Arizona, and he canceled and moved the Super Bowl from Arizona that particular year, all because they wouldn't honor Dr. King Day in the state of Arizona. So that was major too, because a lot of people, how the Super Bowl is not something that you just you know that's usually set in stone, and there's so much things that lead up to the Super Bowl. But for you to take that kind of stance, that I think that speaks volume of him as a man too, whether he did it for the right reasons or political or whatever. But hats off to him as well as that. Dorothy said in high school, history was my best subject as I became an adult when I got our first computer in 1995, which came with an encyclopedia CD. I made my own moment in Black History book. It was at least 200 pages thick. That's what's up. Um, yeah, but so Sam, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit, man, because it seems like I've been going on and on. But how does it feel for you being a veteran? Everything with the state of America today. Um, how do you feel as far as being a veteran?
Before I go into that, I wanted, since you was talking about Lenny,
Yeah, go ahead.
a lot of people don't realize also he he was really he was inducted to the College Hall of Fame also,
Mm-hmm.
and he was one of the assistant coaches on the Dream Team, so he has a gold medal there,
Yeah.
and he also was the head coach, I believe, of the '96 Olympic team,
Mm-hmm.
which also won the gold medal. And then in '79, he was a head coach of the Sonics when they won that championship. So he wasn't just inducted, in minor roles and just being a good player. It also reflected how good of a leader he was. And I just wanted to note that about him.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad you did too, because like I said, I didn't want to just talk about it, but when he was is he's definitely worthy of the praise. You know what I mean? His accomplishments, like you say, there wasn't some minor feats, um, especially during the '96 Olympics. Because if you remember, he had the bombing in Atlanta. The Olympics were here. It was a lot going on at that time. A lot of people didn't want to necessarily play. It was the follow up, the Dream Team 2. How is this going to work? We got NBA players now. So, like you say, to be able to manage all the greatest players in the world, really, like
Mhm.
that takes a heck of a man to be able to say, you know what, to get all these jokers on one common goal for a month. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you're talking about a room full of monumental egos.
Yeah, and he's also, I think he's number 3 when it comes to winning. As
Yeah,
far as
all time. Yeah,
yeah, I think Popovich, everybody know he first, and then
yeah.
Nelson. And
Nelly. Yeah.
I just think that goes to a testament of, just how we forget about people. And I just wish there was some way to have reminders, because a lot of people relate sports to just going out there. They don't understand all the dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
the leadership, the teamwork, the camaraderie, all those things. So with him being celebrated, I mean, even in high school, he was a top player. So at every single level, he has achieved the highest goal,
Mm-hmm.
whether gold medal or NBA championship, he's achieved that. So I just wanted to note that before I spoke about, what the military was for me.
Okay.
And as far as me, the military was to me a godsend. Um, Growing up, nobody talked about college. Like I was not around anybody that talked about college.
Nah.
to the yeah, and especially like in Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
you either gonna work for Dahmer Chrysler Ford or you're gonna be pushing heroin or rocks on the corner. You know, you're gonna be on 7 Mile, Gratiot, you
Mm-hmm.
know, Seymour Drive, Marlboro. You're gonna, and your family would be just as proud of you.
Mm. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and when I would see like college playing on TV, I thought that was like the pros because we never heard in our neighborhood, nobody talked about college.
Wow.
Nobody. So that was one of the things, but I also know that, you know, not having any direction, I did pretty good in school, but not having any direction, I knew for one thing, I had to get out of Dodge, and the military was that escape.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what ended up being a career started with just the smallest enlistment time, 2 years, 22 weeks, and just continued to reenlist, and I think now for me, the military is the cheat code, especially for somebody that doesn't have any direction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and a lot of people will say, well, you know, hey, you can get, you know, you could get deployed to war, you can do all these things, but at the end of the day, it's people out here on the block, on the street, in the neighborhoods
Mm-hmm.
getting shot.
Mm-hmm.
At least when you at war, you have something to fire back. You're aware of who your enemy is. You here, you have people like I think Central had a shooting last week, A&T a couple of weeks before that. Um, at Wake Med Hospital in Raleigh, is a shooting in the dang on ER. Like it's, you know, it can happen at any point. So for me, it gave me that direction. It gave me insight. It taught me leadership, and it actually put a label on things that I knew about, but I didn't know what it was called.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what cohesion was. I didn't know team building. I didn't know all those things, and I think it definitely relayed over to life. And now that I look back, the only regret was that I didn't become a commissioned officer. You know, I remained a non-commissioned officer, and basically just because you get a whole lot more benefits when you retire. But I tell people all the time, if your child don't have a plan, everybody's not meant for college.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if your child's not doing well in high school, what makes you think they're going to do any better in college? You know, like I'm talking about immediate. You
Yeah.
go into debt, you and basically a lot of parents now are just sending their kids to college just to say my child goes to college.
Mm-hmm.
You get in debt and then you graduate with this degree that you can't do anything with and end up at as a barista at Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell people when in doubt, the military to me, even if you do just one enlistment, when you get out after that enlistment, you got 10 extra points for the post office when you take your test. So if you made a 90, you get 100. You know, you make an 80, you get a 90. So you actually get hiring priority. Like it's just all so many benefits, you know, along with the medical, with the dental, with paid vacation, 30 days a year, and then you know you get not just US holidays, but if you're deployed or if you're stationed in like South Korea or Japan, you get their holidays off too. Like it's just crazy, and I don't want to sit here and sound like a recruiter, but that's just how happy I was with that decision to go into the military. And I think it's a cheat code because you basically get your college paid for the rest of your life. Your dependents get paid to go to school. Like it's just so many benefits as far as creating a legacy of your family being provided for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's real interesting that you say that because when I think about it, you know, I always say, you know, it's different when you come from the inner city. I don't care which one it is, whether it's Newark, whether it's Detroit, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Compton. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's different. You have a different outlook on life. You see the world through a different lens. And I didn't realize so much until I started becoming an adult, and I would have different conversations with different people from different backgrounds, and it's like I thought everybody thought this way. I thought everybody was aware of they, you know, what I'm saying, they're aware of their surroundings because you get accustomed to growing up a certain way when you from the inner city, and like you say, now that you say that, when I reflect back, it was sort of like that for us too, like because Big East basketball, the original Big East, when the Big East was the Big East, like we watched more Big East basketball than we probably did pro basketball back then. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? The Walter Berries and the Mark Jackson at St. John's and Providence and Georgetown, the Hoyas, and it was like must see TV. But
Yeah.
even though we knew that the term college, like you say, it was almost like watching pro basketball because we didn't in my age group, it wasn't a lot of people that I knew that went to college. There was a few, but most people went on to have a career, or you went to work at the airport, like you say. Y'all had the car business there, but we had the airport. We got a whole bunch. We had the Port Elizabeth, Port North. So different things like that there, but you never really thought about it. Like the first time I could actually remember thinking about actually even a possibility of going to college was what? Different world. That's why I always mention it. I don't care what Cosby did after the fact. Different World was so monumental for my age group because it was like, okay. I remember that being a thing too in the hood. While when actually think about when you think about how crazy this is now too. Talking about, hey, what's good, sharing that? Um, how we programmed to believe certain things. Like I can remember conversations and partaking in these same conversations where we've loved good times and nobody. I liked Cosby Show, but I used to hear a lot of people hate on the Cosby Show. Like, how you gonna have a show with a doctor married to a lawyer? Like, coming from the inner city, that's like so far fetched. Who would ever think that a lawyer doctor could actually? But now that we're adults, you see that a lawyer can actually be married to a doctor. Everybody doesn't have to come up from the projects. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a lot of times you're familiar, you're comfortable with familiarity. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people in the hood, they understand the struggle of good times and James and never having enough and getting by. So you can relate to that a little bit more than a doctor and a lawyer. All the kids, well off and what have you. But different world was like
Yeah.
it made it looking like going to college. Like, yeah, I want a part of that. I want to go to Hillman. You know what I'm saying? I want to see what this Hillman College is about. You know what I mean? So it opened up a different perspective. And I say this very often. If I could, of course none of us can, but if I could go back, everything that you said, I would have loved to have, knowing what I know now, I would have loved the opportunity to have gone into the military. I took the ASVAT and everything else, but I was one of those ones. You see who behind me on my wall. That's the only reason I didn't go to the military. Because all the stuff that I'd always seen Muhammad Ali talk about and how he took his stance, willing to go to jail because he didn't believe in fighting a war that he didn't believe in. And he's like, and it's not taking away anything from veterans or people that make that decision because everybody has to do something. We need firefighters, we need policemen, we need we need teachers, whether they underpaid or not. We need bus drivers. All these different things. Everything is a necessity. But when I thought about Muhammad Ali, that resonated so much to me. Like, why am I gonna go over here and fight these Viet Cong and they never called me nigga? I always remember the story how he talked about when he got back home, and it's been debatable whether it was true or not. I never heard him confirm it. But when he got home after winning his gold medal, I believe it was '68, going to right there in Louisville, Kentucky, where he born and raised, and they telling him that they can't serve him. You know what I mean? And he took his gold medal and threw it away because it's like, how is it that I can represent this country, have a gold medal, be the baddest in the world, not just America, and yet I'm still coming over here. I come back home. I go fight in Vietnam. I go to fight all these different wars. Not Muhammad Ali, but the active duty people that I've seen. You know, they serve their country. But then for you to come back over here and you still got to get on the back of the bus. You still got, you know what I mean? It was like that don't make sense to me. But having said that, like you say, all the benefits that come from being in the military, being able to go to school, um, your children being able to go to school and different things like that. There, like you say, if you don't have any guidance or any direction, which most people from the inner city don't. We talk about that often. Like I remember when people would come to our school and talk to us during assemblies, it was like, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you see yourself in 10 years?" And like, dude, I'm trying to make it to tomorrow, bro. I'm not even thinking. I'm not thinking of that far down the road. And it's like that's a bad thing because, and I always said that too. Like as an adult, it's kind of unfair when you think about it. Like, why should you actually have to think about what you want to do for the rest of your life as a adolescent at 12, 13 years old? You need to start thinking about what you want to do long term. Like, but that's the reality of the world. Julian said, Sam, did you go through or saw any racism in there?
I don't want Julian to come at me, but I'm just gonna be honest. There's more people that look like me that betrayed me and stabbed me in the back than people that didn't.
Mm,
Literally every promotion, I was able to go to promotion board sooner. It was recommended by folks that didn't look like me.
mm,
And also, my father, he was in the military, and we grew up really diverse. And even in Detroit, like Marlboro was like, is we had Italians, we had Jewish people, we had black, white, like it was pretty diverse. Now, don't get me wrong, people did talk. I'm not saying that there was no racism,
mm,
but I personally didn't experience it in the military. Now, during that time, outside of the military, I'm like when I'm all off duty, out hanging out. Yes, I did experience it, but in the military, it's basically, do you got my six? Do you got my
mm,
back? When we go to war, like you have people, if you guys went out, it didn't matter what color your skin was. If somebody in your platoon got into a fight, guess what? No matter what skin color, everybody in your platoon hopped in. Black, white, Hispanic. So that taught me like that kind of like took away from that. But I'm not gonna say that it wasn't there, but I'm
mm,
kind of like my father, how he brought us up. It really doesn't matter. Um, and he brought us up basically on the same concept, you know, King Jr. brought us up. You judge people by their character. You try to let their actions speak, not what their mouth speaks, let their actions speak. Just like in church, I see a lot of leaders talking about not having hate and forgiving and all that. And then the same leader is doing the complete opposite.
mm.
You know,
Not
you,
practicing what you're preaching.
yeah. So you gotta, and I understand we're all human, but I know that we're all products of our environment. It's our choice whether we decide to become a good product or a bad product. Like I remember watching Channel 62 Black Belt Theater and being all hyped up, five deadly venoms, everything. So I would actually I would actually go out to the back alley and there were syringes on the ground, from heroin addicts.
Mm,
And those were like my throwing stars, like after I watched Black Belt Theater, I'm throwing them up. And I remember one time I threw one up and the syringe came down and stuck me in the leg. Now I still remember I felt like a little hazy, a little buzz. So, nothing happened. It swelled up like, you get a mosquito bite. So 10 years later, I'm starting to hear about HIV and AIDS and, Magic Johnson, all that stuff happened, which really brought it to the forefront.
mm,
So I was, I think, 18. and I was like, let me. I was hearing that it could lay dormant. You know, the virus can lay dormant where you won't show any symptoms. So I went and got tested, and those 2 days were the scariest days of my life, anticipating, and came back negative. But the thing was, I could have been that kid to where it came back positive.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think like we have to stop. I'm one of those people that I don't like to live in the past. I think we need reminders of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go to Fayetteville with my wife, it's about an hour south of Raleigh. There's days I forget about slavery. Like I'm thinking about just my wife next to me, what our son's doing. I don't think about slavery every minute of every day, every minute of my life. I enjoy life. But when I ride down there past this place called the Market House,
Mm-hmm.
it's a reminder.
Yeah.
Visually, I see that and it's a reminder. But I also look back to when I was in seminary where we talked about everything that was at the marketplace. Like it was actually a school for black kids. It was an art gallery. It was, through time, it it was taking on different roles on what it stood for.
Mm-hmm.
So they were talking about destroying the market house. So I'm like, okay, you destroy the market house because at one point in time, slaves were sold there. But then you're destroying an artifact that black kids was educated because they wasn't allowed to go to the other schools. You see, so when you and I think life is like that. When we remove all these Confederate, statues and stuff like that, I'm kind of like against that because we need reminders. We need things to like, okay, don't forget this happened. Or now it's at the point where they like downtown, they removed every Confederate statue from around the Senate building. So now it's just empty ground. So let's say, for example, I got grandkids. My son finally get us some kids, and we're growing up, and they say, "Oh, pop, this happened right here," and I'm like, "No, it didn't." I don't have a place where I can show him and say, "Look, that guy on that statue, he was the one who had 205 slaves. He did." Like we need visuals.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of those things that I just think that when it comes to, I knew I had to get away. I There's a lot of parents now that they don't want their kids to do better than them. They want their kids.
Crazy is that?
Yeah, but I mean that's the real world.
Yeah. That's crazy though.
About 5 or 6 years ago, me and my wife went home to Detroit, and it was her first time there. And we were downtown at the Renaissance Center. That's the Marriott building now, but it used to be the GM building. And it's when you look at the skyline of Detroit, you see the 5-cylinder towers. Well, that's now the Marriott. So we stayed there, and downtown Detroit looks amazing. So I said, hey, let's go over to the old neighborhood. I want you to see where some of the places where I grew up at and lived. So we're in the car and we're on Bluetooth, and I call my cousin, and I say, hey, I'm just taking Doreen over to, to the old neighborhood and stuff. He's like, not to get out. And I said, it's during the day, like he's like, you don't want to go over there at night. So I'm like, it's during the day. He's like, well, not to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, as we rode through the neighborhood and stuff, my wife was like, when are we going back downtown? She's like, this is so depressing. And then one of the houses we went by, she's like, I'm crazy. It's literally a dude, aunt, that I was little. He was probably like 5, 6 years old, and we used to cut grass. Well, now that I'm older, I know I was cutting grass. He was collecting the money and he let me get like 10 packs of lemon heads. I'm probably telling my age, but but he was keeping like the $15-$20, and I was the one doing the cutting. Well,
Mm,
we pulled by the house, and I waved, and my wife hit my ass. She's like, "What you doing?" I said, "That's it. I know." Literally, the house. You have 3 generations living in the house,
mm-hmm,
still there from when I was there when I was little, not doing nothing. So my thing is like, we sometimes as parents, you should want your kids. You train up a child, so they can go out and do better than you did.
yeah,
So I didn't mean to go off on that, but it was just when he talked about what the military, he asked me about the military and if I experienced racism and stuff.
mm-hmm,
Um, it was just it was a lot of factors. Like my father, he was a loving father, but I think in my entire life, he may have hugged me maybe once or twice because he showed me with his actions. He was like, I make sure you never starve. I make sure you always have clothes. I make sure you always have shelter. He never threw the basketball or the football, no sports, none of that stuff. And but that was his way. So when I had our son, it was like, okay, I'm gonna do certain things my pops did, but I'm gonna show a little bit more affection.
mm-hmm,
I'm gonna tell him I love him. The things that didn't now. I didn't get our son everything that I didn't have growing up. But what we try to do is get him all the tools we didn't have growing up.
yeah,
So if you don't make it, you ain't successful. So that's why to this day, I tell anybody, if your child is 18 and they not prepared for this world, I look at the parent. You failed.
excuse me,
Like instead of 18 years of preparing your child for this world, you did 18 years of coddling, spoiling, over nurturing, and they're not prepared because what you failed to do.
mm-hmm.
And that's just my personal.
And that's what I was about to say. Like that's you're entitled to your opinion. You know what I mean? And it's that's why I like having these conversations because I like to hear different points of views. That's one reason I think me and you always had such good conversations because we see things, even though we from similar environments, we see things totally different. I was always one of those ones. Oh, before I get too far, William said 1111 is a huge sign. I'm not sure what that means, but thanks for the comment, William. Dorothy said she loves and respects everyone who served, is serving, and will serve our country. Um, Anytime I see a soldier in uniform, I stop and salute. That's a sign of respect. I like that. I feel so disgusted by my race, how all African Americans were and are still being treated so wrongly. Terry said, "What's good, T?" Terry said, "Happy Veterans Day, bro. Blessings to you and the family. Also, continue to kick us the knowledge." So salute the T and all the comments. But yeah, when you was talking about, I was listening real attentively because you brought up some good points. I was always one of those ones like, nah, tear that crap down. I don't. Why would y'all want a reminder that y'all lost the war? You know, the Ulysses S. Grants and this and that there. And my grandmother, she lives in Old Mills. So as a child, coming down here in the 80s, I would see that. And I remember asking my dad, why he got this big old circle in the middle of downtown Fayetteville? And he explained to me what it was. Like, yeah, man, tear that junk down. We don't need to remind that. We don't need a reminder. But as you was talking, it made me think like, yeah, it's one thing to have a reminder, but you also have to have the knowledge and education to educate people of, okay, listen, this is okay for this to stand here because it symbolizes, like you say, I never heard the part about kids going there to learn. All I know is that it was
Black
the
kid,
slave market. Yeah,
black
black kids.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All I'm hearing about is them being sold and why, thinking roots and they checking the cheeks and checking the women's breasts and to see if they fertile enough to have children and all that did. It's like, but having, like you say, I think it's important for us to keep those type places, but also as in educating them of the history of it, letting them know like this is what it was. We got it's our responsibility to make sure that this never becomes a slave trade market again. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? We don't want to go backwards. You know what I mean? So to your point, I think it's very important that um that's an interesting take. Because like I said, it made me rethink my stance on those type of positions when they're talking about the Civil War and particularly things in the South and things of that nature there. Um that's real interesting. That's real interesting. But I think, like I said, I think it's no harm in keeping them as long as we educate people on who they are. You know what I mean? And the history of it, that everything that's associated with it. You know what I mean? Um, Dorothy
And
said,
and that's my yeah, that's my main thing is not just because something is there, it doesn't mean you need to celebrate it. But the thing is I feel like, especially in the black community, we forget like so quick.
yeah,
Like you take R. Kelly, for example. He went through this stuff, peeing on somebody, whatever. Everybody's like, "Oh, we're gonna boycott." Next thing you know, every wedding, "Step in the Name of Love." Like they pumping it, like so easily forgetting, and it's like Chris Rock said, it's that selective outrage.
mm-hmm.
It's like it's like you have folks that don't look like us spending so much time telling us what our problems, what our issues are.
And that infuriates me.
Yeah, and what infuriates me is the people that listen to them. Like your kids go to Ravenscraft, 50 something thousand, well, 32,000 a year. Your daughters go to St. Mary's, which is 50 something thousand a year.
Mm-hmm.
And you talking about the hood. You talking how it's a benchmark, or you're talking about like issues in the hood. You're talking about public schools. And I think I've told you this before, but the best way to advocate for something is to use it. Like, you can't tell me public schools is amazing and your kids never went to public school.
Exactly.
You can't tell
Exactly.
me, like, it's just one of those things, like, just like a female talking to a few prostitutes. This female that's never been out there don't know what they've gone through in their life to end up on the street.
Mm-hmm.
How are you gonna tell them, "Oh, it's easy, you leave this behind you"?
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what they don't have their personal experience. So that's why I tell people, I always try to have empathy. I love to have dialect and conversations with people that don't necessarily agree with me,
Mm-hmm.
because how do we grow as people? How do we grow? um if somebody's writing a sermon and you look at your audience, you're like, okay, it's going to be black folks, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be in the South, it's a Baptist church, so like near the end, okay, when you get ready to shut it down, you need to do your climax, start hooting or whatever, to get to let the minister of music know it's time to go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and step up back to the organ or the piano to close us out. But then you go to a white church that may be Protestant. You ain't gonna hoot. You ain't, you have to learn your audience. And that's the thing right there, is like you have people that don't know the audience, but they're trying to tell the audience what they should do, how they should react, and they've never experienced what that audience experienced.
Yeah, I almost dozed off as soon as you said Protestant. Because when you
Yeah,
grow up
like
in a black church, it's a totally different atmosphere. They'll
yeah,
have them don't even have music instruments and stuff in their churches and stuff. Um, but yeah, man, it's interesting. Dorothy said, I'm to this day spoiled, but I also know respect, right from wrong, and what love truly means. I also know what true work ethic is. Absolutely. Um, but to your point, and that's one reason. Hmm, I swear, one thing I try to do on the show is I try to stay neutral with everything. I never try to come from my personal experience, because it's not my show. Like I said, I'm just the host. This is for everybody. So I don't never want it to be about me or my scope of things. But every once in a while, somebody will ask me something, or it'll come up in different things, and I'm always slow. You know me. That's why you smiling like that, because I'm kind of quick to try to digress. But to your point, that's one thing that bothers me about these, not all the women, or not everything, but women. I don't want to hear no woman telling me what a real man is. Like, stop it. Don't do that. That's like one of the biggest turnoffs ever for me. You know what I mean? Well, a real man would do this, and a real man would do that. You don't know what a real man is because you're not a man at all. That's like me trying to tell you what a real mother is or what a real woman is.
Man, when sisters try to tell black men what they should be feeling, how they should do things,
Don't do that.
it's like, don't, like, it's just one of those things, like, we hear the term all the time, stay in your lane. And the thing is, sometimes instead of talking, we need to listen. And a lot of people don't know how to stop talking, or when they do listen, is only listening to a point to where they can respond. They're not looking to, like, understand or digest what's said. They're looking to just respond. To create turmoil, to create confusion, to create certain things. So I tell people, like, the wisest people are those who use their ears. But I just think, it's one of those things, and I think vice versa, you know, men shouldn't be telling women what they should feel, what they should do. If you want a reaction from a female, treat her right. Treat her
Mhm.
how you feel like she's supposed to be, but you can't be, you just can't be a certain way if you're not reflecting that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's my whole thing too. And Dorothy mentioned earlier. I think a lot of that comes from respect, and it's like I feel like a lot of people, men and women, we don't come into conversations or discussions with the open mind or with the neutral mindset. It's like you said, everything is just so defensive. Oh, how you gonna tell me what? How you gonna like? That's always. I remember having this discussion with someone, and I got mad at myself because I'm going back and forth about parenting. I'm talking about a good 20, 30 minutes. Well, nah, this is da, 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 da. We going back and forth. And I'm like, you idiot, Marv, you's an idiot. Why are you spending so much time and energy having this conversation with somebody that doesn't have children? They don't know what they would do. All their whole thing is coming from a hypothetical standpoint. But we all know as parents, it doesn't come with a blueprint. It's easy to say what you would do when you ain't in that situation. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
Yeah.
we gotta stop being so one sided and open minded. And it's funny because I wanted to transition. I wanted to get into that a little bit before we got up out of here. Um, and I know this is very unpopular, and I'm not defending it whatsoever. But I shared the post this week, um, where I don't know if you sent it. I meant to send it to you just so you can have reference. But hey, what's good, Jen? Oh, before I forget too, Dorothy. My favorite basketball player. She asked about basketball. Who's your favorite basketball player? Um, my favorite basketball player, hands down, is Magic Johnson. Um, but a close. The only reason that is Magic is because of the seniority. But right after Magic, it would be well. My first favorite player was Dominique Wilkins. uh, let's be clear. I wore number 21 because of Dominique. I loved everything about him. Like, how you gonna have a nickname called the Human Highlight Film? that alone. And Dominic, he was a ladies' man. He was one of the first ones that was dressing, that made it cool to look. You know what I mean? That was dead, and man, Dominique was something else. But overall, it was probably Magic Johnson. And the HIV had a lot to do with that, the way he handled that. Because people like our age, like you said, that in our age group, we know how it was. Like, back during that time, 88, 89, you hear the word HIV, you starting to make funeral arrangements because it was still new. You know what I'm saying? No, absolutely not, Drew. I said I'm a Magic Johnson fan, not no Laker fan. Never about with that purple and gold. Only time I was with the Lakers, only time I root for the Lakers is when they was playing the Celtics. You know what I mean? Because like back to that race thing, like it was like you got Showtime, and then you got the good old boys of Boston, and you know what I mean. And then it was like I never understood how people could become Boston fans, especially black people back then too. Like for Bill Russell to be who Bill Russell was, is the people of the city of Boston treat him like he did, burn his house down and everything. Like that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, but the point I was making was right now, currently, after Magic, it will be definitely AI. I love everything about Allen Iverson. I think Allen Iverson is super underrated. He changed the game. He made it cool to be who we are, where we from, and that you can unapologetically be yourself. Everybody in my circle always talk about me. I'm real. I keep it 100. That's one of the things that I love about AI. Like AI was like, y'all not gonna make me conform to y'all. I will retire from the NBA. I don't have to play this game. And that's the whole thing. People are always telling me that, even in terms of the show. Well, man, if you do this, you can get all the numbers and all that there. Yeah, but I'm not gonna not be myself for numbers, for clickbait, the profit and all these different things there. If I can't be me, I don't want to do it. If I can't be me, I don't want to go. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people he's like, man, you don't do the dinners and all that there because I'm not with all the fake phoniness. Then everybody get in their car and talk about everybody that they was there with. Why am I spending time with people that all I'm gonna do is talk about them? I'm not that type of person. You know what I'm saying? So I just remove myself from those situations. But y'all wanted to answer that question, right? Did you want to go with that? Because I wasn't sure if she was asking me or both of us saying, who's your favorite basketball player?
I'm gonna have to say Kobe, and he wasn't always mine, but he
Mm-hmm.
was. When I hear people talk about Wilt, when I hear people talk about Kareem, I saw Kareem later. Kobe was the first player that I saw literally grow,
Mm-hmm.
and I think for me he was the closest thing to Mike. The only thing is like when Mike was in college, I was deployed. I was off in war and all, so I really wasn't looking at any sports. Now, Kobe was just to see what he went through, like his entire life when he was doing rehab in Colorado, had the affair. As soon as
Mm-hmm.
he hit 10 years, wife filed for a divorce, and he's like, shoot, she can have everything. I just want her, like to see what he went through. Then, he was the only player that I was able to see and follow him from 17 years old all the way to his 40s.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look, I'm not saying like there aren't good players out there, but I kind of like, they're like, well, LeBron did the same thing. But I'm one of those people, I kind of like got LeBron fatigue. I hear people talking about, oh, he's a great physical specimen. He's in shape. And I'm like, the last 7 years, there's only 2 years that he played more than 55 games.
Mm-hmm. He
Yeah,
do, but
I said Jordan at 42 played 82 games. So I don't have that same respect as I did through Kobe tearing ACL, tearing an Achilles.
mm-hmm.
Like everything was like everybody tried to imitate MJ. The closest one that came to it in my eyes was Kobe. Y- Now people are trying to compare Kobe or LeBron to Kobe, or say LeBron. And I'm sitting here like Kobe, every time he was on the court, he didn't just go out there, score, okay, I got this right, and sit down on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
I think LeBron out for what, 5 games? 4 or 5 games? Season just started, but he's just so that's why I have respect for Kobe, because I saw all, not just what he went through on the court, but the
Mm-hmm.
trials that he had in life. The
Mm-hmm.
way that his mother did him when he wouldn't give her, she didn't want just a big house in Vegas. She wanted the biggest house in Vegas. And because he would only give her 400,000 towards it instead of millions, she had nothing to do with him and his family,
Mm-hmm.
her grandkids, his sisters. He put that out. He was like, they both got PhDs. They don't have no kids and not married. Why do y'all need 2, 3, $4 million homes? Like, get out there and like you saw everything in his life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking about off the court. And that right there to me is what I saw as something that I truly respect. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Magic. All through basic training, I used to have my Lakers hat on. I really wasn't a Lakers fan, but I only wore Lakers because of Magic. So it's one of those things that Kobe kind of like took that to me.
Yeah.
He took that from how I felt like about Magic.
And that's the thing. Like it's never when it comes to favorite, because it's the difference between the greatest and your favorite. Like there's never no wrong answer when you ask me your favorite. Um, Drew has said, "Bro, you can't take anything from Bird. That man used to get me so upset until I loved his game." Yeah, I'm definitely not taking nothing away from Bird, but still, screw the Celtics. But Bird was definitely that dude. I tell people all the time, getting back to my age frame from all the time that I watched basketball, there's only been two players, literally. There's only been two players that every time they released the ball, I automatically thought it was going in.
Bird.
Larry Bird and Reggie Miller. Every time they pulled it, not even Ray Allen. And Ray was a bad, bad boy. But every time Larry Bird shot the ball, I thought it was going in. I was shocked if it didn't go in. They're the only two plays that I can ever say that about when it comes to jumpers, whatnot. But to your point, Sam, everything that you were saying about Kobe was why I love AI so much, because me and AI, we the same age group, and we didn't have social media back then. But I kept hearing about this dude down in Virginia playing basketball and football, and I'm like, who is this dude? Who is this dude? And then we hear about the whole bowling alley situation and how he overcame that, and they trying to lock him up. And he got a great documentary out that's now on Prime, and for those that haven't checked it out yet, Iverson. And he also got a new book out now. I would encourage everybody to go get it. But it was just like everything that he went through, like so many people pulling on him, so to speak, before he even make the money. You see what I'm saying? This little urban kid, but you got sheriffs here, all trying to make a name for this dude here, all because he's gonna go. So he literally went from being Mr. Football and basketball in the state of Virginia in 1993, literally having a scholarship to any school in the country. To after the bowling alley incident, zero. Not 4, 5, zero scholarships now. How do you have such a decline based off of something that you wasn't even a part of? You were just there. You know what I'm saying? So he played against a stacked deck. Then we all remember the infamous David Stern with the infamous dress code, and we know what that was about, because now you starting to see little white kids with a throwback jersey on. White kids want to have cornrows in their head. They said, "Listen, hey, we got to stop this." It's one thing when y'all do that over there, but we don't want that coming over here in our neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Which is a discriminate. I won't go as far as racism, but it's definitely discrimination. You know what I'm saying? And you have a right to feel however you want to feel as far as raising your children. But you ain't had no problem like Drew said. It wouldn't have been no problem if Larry Bird was on their wall, like because Allen Iverson just you can't take away nothing from the dude basketball skills. Pound for pound, like we always talk about in boxing, there's never been somebody greater than Allen Iverson pound for pound. Because even Kobe said it. Like you wrote it, Kobe. Even Kobe said it. He was like, "Yo, Allen Iverson would have been the greatest player ever if he had 2 more inches." Like, can you
No,
imagine?
he didn't need 2 more inches. I think what what Iverson needed was what he admitted. He needed
Mhm.
discipline.
Yeah, and that's
And
what it was.
he said when they went to the finals, like the Sixers was only in the finals literally because of Iverson. And
Literally.
to see how they was tripling them, they couldn't stop them. But Larry Brown was like, "Look, if you just let's run a few plays."
Mm-hmm.
He's
And
like,
that's what it was. It was a
he
battle of
said, he
egos. We
said
talked about Lenny Wilkins earlier.
Iverson was like, I didn't want to listen to him. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
I now in hindsight, had I listened to Larry Brown, I would have at least 2 championships.
Mm-hmm. Hold on
But
for this comment
Iverson was
disappeared. Dorothy said, "I love Kobe too, but the legal thing with him was BS. That girl in the hotel situation set him up. She knew who he was and went willingly, then accused him. I agree with that 100%.
well, this the thing about that. He put himself in that position.
Mm-hmm.
When he was going through rehab, you got your physical therapist and all that. Yeah, she knew who she was because he had an alias when he was there. So, so people
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't get. But the thing is, he just came out instead of denying it. He just came out and told the truth. Yeah, we did, but it wasn't right. It was consent.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like what the girl tried to get Chris Brown up a couple years ago. And then he's like, look at these text messages where
Yeah,
she said she
it's always
enjoyed.
a touchy situation, especially in this day and age where
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah,
feel
so
like their opinion
I
matters.
think
Now, go ahead.
yeah, so I just think we put ourselves, in certain situations, but
Mm-hmm.
I think when it came to AI, I think when we started to notice all the stuff happening, I think the final straw for David Stern is when he turned on the TV and saw Allen Iverson at the end of the bench, and that I don't know if it was his mother, whoever that was braiding his hair while he was on the bench. Like he wasn't going to the game until his hair finished getting braided. Like after that, that's when I see the dress code. You got to wear a shirt and tie and all that. And don't get me wrong, I don't think I think that was definitely directed as an attack. But the thing is like you have to you have to use some discipline. Like they overblew the thing about practice. He just lost his best friend and all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's a lot of things that they overblow. That's just life. And I tell people the greatest players to me are the players that they had to change the rules for.
There you go.
They had to change it for Shaq. They had to change it for AI. They had to change it for
Mm-hmm.
Jordan. They had to, that's the thing right there. Like because of Jordan, they got more physical. That hand checking really started getting out of hand. So I think that right there is really good. As far as like Allen Iverson is a perfect example of why we need to make sure that we hold our kids accountable, hold the people around us accountable. Don't just be that yes person. Let them know, dude, that one you was out of pocket on that. And
Mm-hmm.
if they don't want to hear it, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, think about it. Michael Jordan don't talk to Charles Barkley no more because Charles Barkley was
Exactly.
being honest.
Because he's an idiot.
Like
That's
he
why.
was doing his job.
Yeah.
And now Jordan's like, dude, you badmouth me. He's like, I don't care what your job is. So I just think, we need more people that's willing to tell us, to be honest with us.
Mm-hmm. Drew said LeBron can stay out for the season and send Junior home. Come on, Sam. You sounding like a diehard undercover Laker fan too.
Hey, I was back then, but I'm not no fan. I support the Pistons, the Lions, the Tigers, the Red Wings. I always support all those
All
teams.
Detroit.
But
Gotcha.
now, yeah, now I really don't have. I got players that I like, but I really don't have no team that I really pull for in the NBA because I just, I don't like the politics side of it. I don't like. There's just certain things that just turn me off. Like, you know, you can. I think one of the most strongest players for civil rights and all that stuff was Kareem,
Mhm.
but he did it by the law. And when I say the law, he he conversed and he worked with people that was in power to try to change things. He wasn't selling the t-shirts, he wasn't doing the symbolism, he was actually doing the activism. And right now activism has turned into symbolism.
Mhm.
Basically you do something for appearance, but you're not. It's like I'm still waiting for to hear about a DL Hughley scholarship. You talk all this stuff, you're a millionaire, but I ain't heard one college say they're offering DL Hughley scholarship to underprivileged people entering school. Like, we can say stuff all day long, but what are our actions?
Mhm. Drew also said John Thompson really saved Morning and AI, bro. They both had pressure from a known guy from DC in the street. That I was ready, getting ready to get there too. I was trying to get to the comments before they disappeared. And good night to you too as well, Dorothy. Dorothy said, "Good, gotta go make an important phone call. Catch you guys. Good night, Marvin, and good night, Sam. Appreciate you always supporting the show. But yeah, Rafa. Everybody know about Ray. Well, I don't know. I can't say everybody know, but I've always been fascinated with the drug game in Detroit, and I meant to ask you. I got another that made me think about ask you something too. But Ray for Edmond, then DC. You know, I remember it was alleged that he was paying players to take games at Georgetown, and John Thompson went to the hood. He went to his block, told him, "Hey, listen, bro, stay away from my players." and,
Mm.
and
I can
Raven said,
believe that.
"Yeah." And Raven said he was like, "Yo, I'm a known gangster, bro, but I had to respect that. I had to respect that as a man. He came to me as a man and he let me know that he wasn't just using him, and that's one of the things that one of the reasons I always loved John Thompson. I always said I only when we talking about college earlier. Of course, I wasn't good enough in basketball, but it was like only reason I ever wanted to play basketball. The only reason I started playing high school basketball was the possibility that I might get to go to Georgetown and get to play for this man. Like that was the only reason I ever touched the basketball in my life because I was that fascinated by John Thompson. It was just like I said, Big East. It was just something about this dude with the towel over his shoulder. It was like, I want to get to meet him. I want to get to know him because it just seemed like he embodied everything that I thought a man should be or a coach should be. And it wasn't just about basketball. He was going to teach you about life and all these different things there. But one of the things when they talk about AI, one of the things that his mom always said was like, AI, and John Thompson had talked about it before he passed away. It was like, yo, if you don't let my baby come to Georgetown, he is gonna die.
Yeah.
And she literally cried, broke down in tears, crying, like I need you. And she said she never forget it. Said John Thompson put his arm around her and said, I got you and I got him. And that right there, this ain't for the cameras, this ain't for the newspaper. This is just because he cared about saving this one individual life. Because AI could have went a whole different way. Because that's like you say, think about it. When you're coming from Detroit, you talked about it. You can either go to work for GM or you can become the best drug dealer, and they still gonna be proud of you. Certain
Yeah.
environments, that's what it's like. That's the real deal. Newport News is no joke. I don't been down there. it's no joke down there. So um yeah, hats off to him. That's a hell of a point, T. T said crazy how they clowned AI over practice, yet LeBron done missed crazy games.
You know?
that's, that's a real good point. Uh, AI brought the blacktop game to the NBA and it was lethal. And I won't say that you wronged you. Only thing I would add to that is to me, I felt like he brought it back to the blacktop back to the NBA because let's not forget Connie Hawkins, all those ABA players that came over in the 70s. Like that's why the NBA merged with the ABA because people wasn't even going to NBA games. The excitement was the Connie Hawkins and the Dallas Dog, like all those ABA players. Dr. J, you know, it was Showtime and Flash and
Lou
like they
Alcindor.
play on the blacktop. Huh?
Lou Alcindor.
Yeah, yeah. You know what I'm saying? One of the greatest players to ever come out of New York, in my opinion. We were talking about guards earlier, but it's hard for anybody to top what, because you know people always talk about that there, and they always say I'm hating, which is part of it. I admit it. I do be hating on Mike, but Mike, it ain't hate that why Mike ain't the greatest. He ain't the GOAT to me. You know what I mean? My GOAT conversation always start with Bill Russell, first and foremost, 11 championships in 13 years, two as a player coach. That's never going to be done again. So he's already in the class by himself in terms of that. I don't want to hear nothing about what he ain't played against nobody and they was plumbers and everything else. You play the hand that you dealt. And that's exactly what Bill Russell did. You know, ain't nobody, Bob Cousy ain't got 11 rings. John Havlicek ain't got 11 rings. JoJo White, nobody else got 11 rings other than Bill. But after Bill, it's always Kareem for me because of what Kareem did on every level. He won on every level. If I'm not mistaken, Kareem never lost a college game in 4 years at UCLA. That's
Oh yeah,
crazy. That's crazy. It ain't no one and done. This way before one and done. You know what I'm saying? This dude was he's arguably the greatest basketball player ever to me. Ever. Julian said, I think Morning is married to Edmund's sister, one of them. Oh, word. Never knew that. Bernard King was tough, bro. Oh, absolutely. B King was he was the ultimate scorer. Ultimate scorer. But
he.
Sam, I wanted to ask you that because we gonna even get into the last topic. But I rewatched the 30 for 30 on the Fab Five last week. And it made me think about you. What you know about what's his name? Is it Ed Martin? You got any Ed Martin stories? The dude that supposedly big money Ed, he worked for GM or something, and retired and was taking care of all the players in the inner city there in Detroit. The one that was supposedly gave the money to Chris Webber and got in all that trouble.
No, a lot of people don't know this, but Jalen Rose family is really rich. Like they was back
Okay.
then. And Chris Webber lived with Jalen Rose and his family. Like
All
through
right,
in
yes,
high
I never
school.
knew that. Jalen
Yeah,
made it
like
sound like back then he was struggling too, and you know what I
no,
mean?
no. Jay, they stayed on the west side.
Okay.
And the Detroit is two sides. It's either the east or the west. There's no north, there's no south. You're either on the east or the west. The east is what you saw like 7 Mile, it's closer to downtown. The west is more of like Cary. You know,
Okay.
it's like on the east side, all the roads are straight. They're like blocks. On the west side, you start running in the neighborhoods where the roads curve. So when you're in Detroit, if the streets curve, that's a wealthy neighborhood. It's an affluent neighborhood. They
Okay.
have private security driving around.
All right.
So all of them, it was kind of like how LeBron and them went to St. Mary's,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So they all left school, left Cas and all that, and they all went to the Catholic school there.
Gotcha.
But Chris Webber's family was really struggling, so that's when Jalen's dad took him in.
Mm.
And the thing is, I'll tell about people like Jalen Rose created a K through 12 school. A hundred,
Absolutely. They don't talk about that enough.
but this is the thing: 100% college acceptance rate, 100% college scholarships. The teachers at that school are the highest paid in Wayne County, and everybody exceeds grade level.
Why don't you think that get more recognition?
So, and guess who funds all of it? Jalen. He don't get no support. Yeah, he has some grant writers that they write grants and everything.
Mm.
But now you look at LeBron. When was the last time you heard about his school that he partnered
It's been a
with
minute.
Akron? The
But that's what
last
I'm saying. With Jalen, why don't you think that they give him the credit that he deserves in terms of that? Do you think that is Jalen bravado? His
well,
like
I think is no, I think I I seriously doubt anybody in the NBA world dislikes Jalen Rose.
okay.
Like
Hey, we good, Walt.
yeah, he has character and all that. But the thing is like the NBA or anybody. I remember when Steph won a championship. He was the hero, he was the angel, he was the golden child. And then literally a year later, Steph becomes the bad guy, and LeBron, this is when he went back to Cleveland. LeBron becomes the angel. All the media, everybody changes their narrative that Steph Curry's bad, LeBron James is this. So you stop hearing about LeBron James school when zero students pass 8th grade math and reading at that school.
That's
All
interesting
the
that you would even bring that up because I know I was big on it too because if I'm not mistaken, it was saying that kids got to go to school for free. If the parents hadn't went to college, they got to go for free and all that did. And it was
no,
like
but
this
that's the
big
thing.
thing.
That was a public school.
Got you.
The I Promise School was it was an Akron City school. They just partnered because LeBron James didn't hardly put no money. He did uniforms for basketball, uniforms for the students, and he I think he gave like $5 million initial seed money, to make the teachers get
Mhm.
paid higher than the other schools, and they had to rewrite it to make it like a bonus because you can't give to a specific school, a city school. It has to go into a pot. So basically, he put it into the PTA. So they did create a program to where the parents could get resume classes, and while they help people find jobs, but when they actually reviewed everything, and this is like in 4 or 5 years, no 8th grader passed math or reading. Like no 100%. So my thing is this: it's like, when I mention that, it's like Baltimore schools in America, more money is spent in the Baltimore school system than any other school system in the country, and they have the worst grades.
That's crazy.
I think they had two students and seniors that passed. So I think it's one of those things that everything is about a story, clickbait. That's why
Mm-hmm.
you don't hear about Jalen Rose. AC Green did the same thing. He has a school where basically Jalen Rose actually mirrored AC Green school.
Okay.
Nobody knows about that.
Mm-hmm.
AC Green drove a Toyota. He ain't driving no Benz. He ain't, he was putting the money into school back home in his community. But you don't hear about that because I tell people all the time, and I don't want to sound like no hater, but LeBron didn't really struggle when he was growing up. Once he found out they saw some potential, you had his stepdad or his mom boyfriend started, drug dealer. He was in real estate, them jokers ate well.
Mm-hmm. And
They
that's my point when I was talking about AI earlier too. Not to cut you off, but it's like I don't like these fake fluffy stories. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm glad you brought it to my attention. I didn't know that. That's something I ain't never know about
How
Jay.
many
I told Jay
17-year-olds, driving around $110,000 Hummer?
exactly.
Like that's why I tell folks like that Joker talking about like he is just as hood as his son Bronny, who
You
grew
say
up
Carton,
went to Sierra Canyon.
Carton Banks. That's what I'm saying. I don't like the fake. I don't like the fake was like that. If you come from that environment, and we not trust me, we're not glorifying the inner city and all that did. It is what it is. That's where we come from.
No,
But
but
don't.
that's the thing. He 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 didn't struggle.
That's
He
my point.
once
Don't
once
don't
yeah.
borrow from our don't borrow from our pain. That's one of my issues now with when it comes to people. I always say I don't like to get personal, but people always like, why you be hating on Shaq? I be like, cause Shaq is not from Newark, New Jersey. His grandmother lives in Newark, New Jersey. Shaq
Yeah.
has never went to school with nobody in Newark, New Jersey. Like he can't.
It was
You're not
Texas,
from
right?
there.
San Antonio.
Yeah, because he grew up in the military, but he spent
But
most of his
but
time
his
down
yeah,
here
his
in Texas.
stepdad was at
Exactly.
Fort Sam Houston.
So that's all I be saying is like rep your hood, rep where you from. Don't rep, you know what I mean? If you from people always say, well, it's one and the same. No, it's not. If you from Irvington, you from Irvington.
Yeah.
If you from North, you from North. I don't want to see nobody from South Orange claiming North. It's
Yeah.
like I don't want to see nobody from North claiming Camden or Patterson or Jersey City. Like, you know what I mean? Claim where you from. I'm real territorial when it comes to stuff like that. Dude. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Drew said there is no GOAT, but to me, all great players of the game. I absolutely agree. I only entertain. I agree with that 100%, Drew. I only entertain the GOAT conversation because it's something that people talk about, but is really a waste of time talking about the GOATs for me because it's like it's all subjective. It's all based on your opinion, and everybody has a different criteria for GOATs. Some people measure championships, and if you measure championships, then you got to say Robert Horry is one of the greatest of all time. But we know that Robert Horry ain't no great. You know what I mean? He's not one of the greatest of all time. So everybody got a different criteria on that whole GOAT conversation, which is a waste of time to me. And Walt said they banned Duncan because of Kareem. I'm glad you brought that up too, Walt, because in one of these NBA groups that I'm in, we was having this conversation, and I'm trying to think of who was it. It was somebody that they was comparing, and they were saying that it was almost blasphemous, but they were saying that he didn't create his own shot. And I got in the comments because I try to stay out of the comments. That's a rabbit hole for real. But I told him, I said, you're right. Kareem didn't have a shot. He just created something called the sky hook that was literally unblockable, especially a 7-footer shooting it. Like the sky hook was crazy. We all was trying to, you know what I mean? We was all trying to sky hook because it was just like, y'all want me to dunk? Okay, I'll take it out here. Kareem's hitting sky hooks from half court. I ain't just talking about right there by the basket. Like, come on, man. He revolutionized the game, man. You calling a lot of Lakers saying I listen and I don't judge.
Yeah, I saw yeah.
Yeah, but I was asking you about the Ed guy because it made me think about something that I had kind of wanted to talk about here on the show. And I know everything has changed a little bit in terms of the NIL. And Terry, you could chime in on this, and Walt, Drew, y'all thoughts on it, or whoever else out there. But it's like it pisses me off even when I think about the whole Chris Webber thing, where you see all these universities making all this kind of money, and it's a violation for a dude to buy you a $2 slice of pizza. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's absolutely absurd, crazy to me. I remember when I got ready to go to college too. People don't realize this. If you go to college on a scholarship, on an athletic scholarship, technically you're not supposed to be able to work. So therefore, how am I supposed to be able to make money? Now, like I said, I know things have changed with NIL, but this is my question. When they talked about Ed, the Ed Martin guy, he getting their money because he was doing it not for just Chris Webber, but apparently all the kids in Detroit. He was the money man. He worked. They said he would retire. He worked for GM for like 30 years. Retired. So he was real wealthy. He had money, and I feel like if you got that kind of money, you could do whatever you want to do with your money. You know what I mean? Now,
Mm.
The hypocrisy, because that's what I hate most of all, hypocrisy. How is it that Ed, let's say for example, he got in trouble for giving money to Chris Webber, but it would have been no problem for him to give that money to the University of Michigan or the Michigan State. So my question is, how is it that it's wrong for these donors and these boosters to give money to the colleges, but they can't give money to the players? Does that
Yeah,
make sense
I
to you
think
guys?
yeah, it don't, but that's the thing about the NIL is that they incorporated it and they didn't regulate it. Like it was zero rules. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the issue. The transport portal, they end up open that basically all year round. But like I used to be a Chris, I was Fab Five fan. I used to wear the black socks, you know. And the thing is like, right now, Chris Webber, I can't stand him. I
Mm-hmm.
used to love him, but I can't stand him after what that Joker did to Doug Christie. Uh, I can't even. To me, that tarnished his whole life in my eyes.
Yeah, I was never a big Chris. I was a fan. I was a fan of Chris. Uh, like you said, the Fast Five as a whole, as a unit. like like I was talking about Allen
Yeah.
Iverson, they definitely revolutionized the game and made it cool with the baggy shorts and, like you said, the black socks. Everybody want to wear black socks now. Jokers getting fined. They made it cool to be who we are. I think that's what I always like about when I see people from a place like where I'm from, and they make it and still be who they are. You know what I mean? Like you was talking about earlier. I agree with it, and I kind of disagree too. Like it's one thing to hold people accountable, but at the same time, too, like you should never have to stop being who you are. Well, look, you want to when you go to this place, you got to. You should never. If I got to change who I am, I don't want to be in that room. That's just me. Period. And I get it. Well, you gotta carry yourself a certain way if you want to be the president. Okay, well, why? Who said I want to be the president? Who said I want to meet the president? Or, these different type atmospheres. Like, you know what I mean? I remember one time going out to dinner with this young lady, and she was like, they was tripping because I was eating my asparagus with my hands. That's what's comfortable to me. Well, you can't go to certain places and you got to use your knife and fork. I don't have to do anything. You know what I'm saying? And trust me, I'm paying for my meal, so I'm gonna eat it however I want to eat it. If anybody that in this restaurant that don't like the way I'm eating, by means, you ain't got to look at me or watch how I'm eating. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to enjoy myself. You know what I mean? Well, how I'm eating my asparagus ain't got no effect on you. Um, Terry said Chris went Bobby Wallman. Everyone takes the hush money from their village. Most guys get caught from the splurging too much. Money to players changes the integrity of the game. It does, but in certain cases it does. It definitely does. I'm not absent to that. I'm just saying that it's
I
wrong.
gotta.
I think that is just it's just
I was gonna
wrong.
say,
Hey, what's good, Daniel? Go ahead, Sam.
yeah. I mean, look at Central. They just have 4 basketball players put off the team because they were throwing games for money.
Mm-hmm.
FanDuel and all that. You got NBA players. Like they taking money. And the thing what makes it funny or stupid rather is that you winning your boys $20,000
You
and
making
now
millions.
you done lost $1 million
Mm-hmm.
contract because they need your over and under to be this or that. That's why I'm like, you know what? And then they tied LeBron into that. And I'm sitting here like, okay, the last 7 years, he's only had like 2 seasons over 60 games. Like it was literally becoming in Vegas on is LeBron how many minutes he's playing or
Mm-hmm.
is he going to play this game? So I
And that
think
to me that didn't even really had nothing to do with LeBron. It was more or less Damon Jones. Why is you selling this information? As good as LeBron been to you from an album perspective, like I don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
but it seemed like LeBron did everything in his power to make sure that Damon Jones had kept a job in the league. Everywhere
Yeah,
LeBron went, he
LeBron did
took
that
him
for
with
a
him.
lot of people.
And for you to repay this man by selling the information on, like, come on, man, that's a violation, man. And I'm a big loyalist. Like, when you and my crew, we down, we down.
Yeah.
Like, that's a major violation for you to do some inside information like that there when I'm giving you access to all this information. How you gonna sell me out like that? If I was LeBron, I would have been pissed.
Yeah,
Because
and
now
you
you
gotta
got my name coming up in conversations that it shouldn't even be mentioned in.
yeah, and you gotta look at the referees too. I know that one ref, that white dude, he had
Yeah, Tim.
he wrote a book and he
Steve Jackson
basically
too.
this wasn't Steve, but this dude was like, he wrote in his book, he's like, we could literally dictate if it went 7 games or win a full series or if it didn't.
Yeah,
We
that's Tim.
literally
What is it? Tim McConaughey, something like that.
Yeah, I think he went to prison
Yeah,
because he
he
was
did.
betting on games.
Yeah,
But the thing is like he's like, it's a lot of refs doing that. And then when I look at like when I'm able to endure a WNBA game and I watch it and I'm sitting here like,
what you
ain't no
mean by
way,
endure?
man. I think it's a bunch of general contractors, all them bricks being laid, all that mortar. I'm like, somebody got to have their general contractor certification.
Don't you
But
talk about them ladies like that, man? Don't hate
man,
on
it
the
is
ladies.
what it is. But I tell folks like, hey, as long as you got humans involved, I mean, you think about some of the calls in the NFL, you look at some of the calls now, like all that's going to be up under a microscope, which I think is good. Because it's some real questionable calls.
Yeah,
Like, and they dictate games. So I just think like, I think they need to find something, because anytime you got humans involved, it's always a chance of
human
corrupt.
error.
That's why I
Yeah.
don't like boxing
Mm-hmm.
because the judges basically can dictate. That's like when they do the 3 judges, it'll say
I don't
190
even do boxing. Yeah.
and then 150 and then 190. I'm like, what
How
the
y'all
world
watching the same fight saying so differently? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's what I'm sitting here like, y'all sitting on each side. I understand y'all sitting on different sides of the ring, but for y'all dang on points to be off that much, I
Yeah, it
can
don't
see
add up.
like up to 5, but when it's like a 10-point difference, like what fight was you watching? So I
But to
just
Walt point, he said money changes the integrity of the game. Money to players. I think money period changes the integrity of the game. Whether it's whether it's the referees, whether it's the players, whether it's the organizations.
Mhm.
Literally, when I was getting dressed work this morning, that old piece on now is two dudes that just got locked up in baseball. One Dominican cat and another cat. Forgot what team they play for, but you know how they got the pitch count in baseball now. I ain't no real baseball expert, but they got a pitch count in baseball now. And
Mhm.
dude, this wild pitch that he threw, they were saying that it was evidence that he was adding to his pitch count to win side bets too. So it's like literally collusion and everything. They locked him up because they tried to lump him in with the Terry Rozier situation in some kind of way. I didn't get to watch the whole piece, but it was 2 particular baseball players, and I'm like, them 2 couldn't even speak English. But here it is, they caught up in some old illegal scam. So I think money just corrupts the integrity of all sports, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Because it's like, as much as I love football, basketball, I don't, basketball, it is what it is. But it's like you hear about what was my man named Houston, Adrian Foster. All these people that come out. It's funny how they have mentioned that the stuff is scripted, but next thing you know, they disappear. You don't see them on social media nowhere.
Mhm.
But Aaron Foster was a great running back. He was nice.
Yeah.
Dude was nice. But man, they already scripted, man. We're gonna run 100 plays this day. 60 of them gonna be this here, that, this. Like, He said on the first day of training camp, they would get him a script. I would be an idiot not to entertain that. No, they would never do nothing like that. How you gonna say what people wouldn't do, especially when you talking about a billion and $1 trillion industry? You know what I'm saying? Like I said, think about it like this year, last year. Even though it wasn't as exciting and it was the least reviewed finals in NBA history or up there, how is it that the Pacers and OKC go 7 games? Like all these 7 game series now, then you find out these jokers is making like $500 million per game. Who wants to see a sweep? I'm losing out on potential $2 billion. You know what I'm saying? I can't not factor that in when I'm talking about the integrity of sports. So I just take it all with a grain of salt when it comes to all these professional, because you never know what's real anymore. You never know what's real. But that was my take on that. Before we get out of here, because I see Daniel in the comments too. So what I was talking about, I wasn't going to talk about it, but we're going to talk about this real quick. So I made the post and I shared the post, and a lot of people was chiming in on it about is the song "It Was the Blood," talking about the blood of Jesus, but they singing it at a drag show, and I believe it was in Texas, and people, oh my God, this blasphemy! They playing with the blood of Jesus, they going to hell and all that there, this here and that there, and I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying there's no right or wrong. Just I like to talk about stuff that don't nobody else want to talk about. You know what I mean? My thing is, as Christians, who gives us the right? And Drew, I definitely want to hear what Drew got to say on this. But who gives us the right to get to dictate who can sing what? When we talking about the blood of Jesus and gospel songs and Christian music, whatever, they ain't got no place like that. I remember maybe around 2000, somewhere around there. Might have been a little bit earlier. No, it was definitely earlier than that. Being in the club and Kurt Franklin coming on. Like, I don't hear no Kurt Franklin in no club. You know what I'm saying? And I remember God Almighty dealing with me about it. Like, keep that man's name out your mouth. You don't know who in this club tonight hearing Stomp that's gonna come home and pray or talk to me or go to church tomorrow morning. You know what I'm saying? Now, I feel like it's inappropriate for Kurt Franklin to be heard in the club, but it might be life changing for somebody that's actually in there. You know what I'm saying? Just because it's not life changing for myself. Having said that, who to say this song being played and sung at this drag show ain't gonna be deliverance for someone else? And of course, this is the rhetorical question. I mean, y'all, you could answer or give it your take on it or whatever. But what gives us isolated rights to gospel music, and who gets to sing it and who doesn't, based off of the lifestyle that they live?
Well, I think when it comes to that, in the clip, you have to go like some people do things as a mockery.
Mm-hmm.
Some people you don't necessarily, unless you have the context of what's actually happened. Like, on another podcast I was on, we was talking about like leadership. And my personal thing is, and I don't want YouTube to cut this, but my personal thing is I try to live my life. I'm no saint or perfect, but I try to live my life as close to. I try to relate everything to scripture. Whether I'm messing up, I use that scripture to say, okay, yeah, I messed up, or I'm wrong in that. But when I believe marriage is between a man and a woman, because that's what the Dead Sea Scrolls, most of the Bibles that I've read or studied, that's what it states. Now, when we come now, I respect the law though.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in what is it called? A domestic partnership.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, don't call it marriage. Don't tarnish what me and my wife have.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to be different, but then you want to be treated the same. It's kind of like the situation with WNBA players. You want you only play 42 games a season, but you're using a 84 game a season. That's if they make the playoffs, at least the
Mm-hmm.
first round. 84 games to 90 games in the season to your 42. You're it's literally
Your product is not as good.
oh, I know
Period.
that. That's what, like I said, there's a bunch of general contractors.
We can't. We
Now,
can't. We can't. We can't not factor that in.
but the thing is like, okay, you want the NBA players get 51% of revenue. You're looking at everything they're doing, and you're spending so much time looking at everything they're doing that you're not even doing your job. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like they're negotiating their CBA. So they were offered to for their minimum salary to go from 79,000 or 75,000 a year to quadruple, and they turned that down. Like, we'll go on strike. And I'm like this. If those women go on strike, it is done. Ain't nobody gonna care. Like,
I was
the
about to say.
outside this past year, I never even knew when the WNBA finals was. And then YouTube the dang on parades, the victory parades. Ain't nobody at the parades. Like, and then like you look at Las Vegas when it was going down the Vegas Strip, when they won that championship a couple years ago, you in Vegas, you only have a couple of sports teams, and nobody is on the sides of the street.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think like focus on your art, because when we talk about the ABA, when they say, yeah, these players were like postmen and milkmen and stuff like, yeah, they was. you know, they were that because the ABA wasn't paying a whole lot of money. But soon as they begin to get that commodity, the guys wasn't complaining. They would grind, 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 do what they need to do. I agreed to this contract, so I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna play. That's what I agreed to. And at the end of this contract, we can negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Now they sitting out. I'm gonna force you to negotiate. I'm gonna force you to do this. And it's like now they getting their pay. I'm talking about the men. So I think
Mm-hmm.
the women, nothing against them, they just need to focus. Stop watching. What's that saying that people say? Don't let the food on your plate get cold
Mm-hmm.
worrying about what's on my plate.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, if them jokers strike, it's over. That league is done.
Terry said women support the NBA more than the WNBA. Absolutely. Yeah, but back to this thing, right? So I don't even know how we got on back to the WNBA.
Well, it
Well,
was I was
you
basically just saying like the context of
uh-huh.
with them singing the blood of Jesus, like what was the context? Was it in mockery? What was the play up to it? But to me, I feel like it depends on where it was. Like it's a lot of things that play into that. Like how you were saying with the Marvin Sapp, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
I'm
contest.
saying 2000. Like it's the context.
Mm-hmm.
We see one clip, and I may be like, man, how they doing that? They in drag up there singing. That's blasphemy. But I'll say
Mm-hmm.
that same thing about Kurt Franklin when he twerk on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
You
And
know, but
that's my thing. It's like it's almost like what I guess that's my real question. Like, what is it within us that feels that we have the right to ownership. Like Thanksgiving is coming up, right? So I will use an analogy. It's like let's use my family for example. My mother has 3 sons, and let's say my mom want to host Thanksgiving. All her sons are always welcome at her home. That type of environment. Now, because let's say I'm a dope fiend, and it makes the rest of my family uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
He need to get his stuff together. Every time you turn around, he got a needle stuck in his arm. This here, that there. But my mother gave me an invitation just like she gave you an invitation. Whether you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
what gives us ownership over Christianity based on a view where, at the end of the day, that's our belief system. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not to say that I agree with it, but we always go back to what does the book say? What does the Bible say? But the truth of the matter is, to some people, the Bible ain't nothing more than a book. It's not the infallible word of God. You see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
it made me think about it like this when I was looking at the video, because even when I was in Little Rock, I remember one of the things that I was most passionate about was I wanted to have 2 choirs. I wanted to have a church choir that I could have in um Walt said it doesn't matter, Philippians 1:18. And I'm gonna look it up and read that. Um but the purpose was I wanted to have a traditional choir in the church where you living by according to the words and all our principles. You know what I mean? Different things of that nature there. So that's what it takes to be in the church choir. However, I also wanted to have a community choir because I know a whole bunch of prostitutes that love gospel music and they love God too. They just not living a Christian lifestyle. I know a whole bunch of alcoholics that love to sing gospel music and it does something for them spiritually, whether they walk in the walk, living a holy lifestyle or not. You see what I'm saying? So
Mm.
I wanted to have that option for someone else. So I feel like it's like a self-righteous stance where we condemn people to hell for singing about the blood of Jesus when they have access to it just like you have access to it.
Mhm.
Again, I'm not saying that is right, but what gives us ownership in how dare they? Jesus said, I died for all y'all. That mean the trans, that mean the gays, that mean the straights, men, women, whatever. Let me see. Doesn't matter. Philippians 1:18. Let me see. Philippians 1:18 in
Oh, what then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. Yes,
mhm.
and I will rejoice.
Okay, got you.
From Paul. Yep.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it says too. I'm reading it in New Living Translation, but that doesn't matter. That's why I guess that's why he said it. That doesn't matter whether their motives are false or genuine. The message about Christ is being preached either way. So I rejoice, and I will continue to rejoice. Oh, so that's what he was saying, and that's kind of that's kind of my stance. He just reading the scripture.
Well, I was actually saying that too. It was just that's
What's the
why I
inclusion?
said
Yeah,
if they're mocking,
yeah.
like if they're, we if we
And that's the
watch
point. Don't none of us know that. We just watching
yeah,
this
we
clip.
can tell. All we
Yeah.
have is what was played. We don't know the 15 minutes before that, the 15 minutes after.
Mm-hmm.
Like the 15 minutes after, there could have been 10, 15 people that came up and gave their life to Christ.
Yeah.
But we don't have that context.
Exactly. I just had my cousin on here. What was it last month? Who admitted to being openly gay, but he said his relationship with God is better than it ever been
Yeah, I
since
remember that
growing up in
episode.
church. And
Yeah.
it's like, who am I to say based off of how I believe what he telling me his personal experience? Who am I to say like you're lost, you're so misguided? Like no, If that's, you know what I mean, I have
Every
no hell
everybody
ever
has a
touch with.
everybody has their own battles, and this is the what I tell people. One time I was at the barber shop. It was some years ago, and they were like, yo, Sam, what's the greater sin? Murder or being bisexual? And I said, well, who am I to judge the greater sin? I
Sin
said,
is sin.
sin is sin. I said, but that's something that that person has an answer to God for, not me.
Mm-hmm.
So what I tell people, like when somebody is doing something that I think is suspect, I try not to put energy into it because why am I going to waste some energy on something that I don't believe or I don't care about? Like I don't because I see how Kurt Franklin carries on sometimes, twerking and all that. Guess what? I don't listen to Kurt Franklin. That's my personal beliefs
Yeah.
because I think that even though we all go through things, have been through things, we need to show we should reflect the transition that God's made in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not going to throw stones when I live in a glass house,
Yeah. I got to
but
worry about me.
I have the choice whether I listen to Kurt Franklin or not. I
Absolutely.
have a choice whether I listen to Kanye or not.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just talking, 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 I got the choice. I'm gonna take this back to a few months ago. I got the choice if I want to listen to Charlie Kirk or not.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like it, don't listen. If you
Yeah.
don't like what you see, don't look.
And
You
and that's
know,
that's that's a little, I agree with that assessment completely because that's sort of my point. Me, I don't listen to Kurt Franklin either. But just because I'm not a fan of Kurt Franklin does not mean that he's not drawing someone closer to God that listen to him in his audience. You know
and
what
he
I'm
and
saying?
he and he very well. Let me tell you about Mary, right? They're Kojic, Church of God in Christ. They did the convocation in Memphis one year. They came out and got booed off the
Mm-hmm.
stage
Yeah,
by
I
a
remember that.
bunch of saints. Guess why they got booed off? Because they were wearing jeans when they came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I love Mary. I love you go to some religions, they'll be like Pentecostal. They'll be like, oh, the whinings is sinful. BB and
Mm-hmm.
CC is sinful because it sounds like a love song.
Like they did
Like
Ray
and,
Charles.
and matter of fact, when you was young, with the tape deck and stuff, and you like
Mm-hmm.
somebody, you put together a mixtape.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, my mixtape used to have BB and CC on it. But I was young. I was a young teenager. I'm listening to the flow and how it made me feel. And I understand they're saying it's that love for God, it's that love for Jesus. But
Absolutely.
you could definitely put it on a slow jam,
It's
some of
just
that
like
stuff.
anything else. Like I always say, like the purpose of a vehicle is a vehicle. But some people actually use a vehicle as a closet. I know
Yeah.
the purposes behind BB and CC, but I would be lying if I said I ain't never got busy to know BB and CC, knowing where it comes from. You know what I'm saying? Terry made a good
Yeah.
point. Terry said Jesus comes to people in the darkest places, and we don't supposed to be judged if we're going on God's word. Um, Walt said, "Fact, Sam. Nicely said." And to Terry's point, I'm with that. A lot of people like we ain't supposed to be judging, and they we quick to say I'm not judging nobody, but you are.
Yeah.
Now, I think where the blurred line comes in that sometime is I remember I remember um I remember we did a show. This was years ago in the beginning, and we were saying something, and I brought up the fact I was saying as a minister, no, as a citizen, I was like you were talking about earlier. As a citizen, I believe in gay rights or whatever the case may be as an American citizen. However, as a Christian, when I'm in a pulpit preaching, I have to preach against homosexuality based off of what the book said and what you know what I mean? Not saying that it ain't too late or whatever the case may be that you live in the wrong lifestyle, but I have to speak against it. As a preacher, that's not me judging. That's me saying it. And I have made the statement that, you know what I mean, being gay was wrong according to the word of God. And, you know, if you believe what the word say, that's damnation. And all the rest of the panel that was on the show was like, they made it a point to say, well, I'm Christian too, but that's Marvin's point of view. I don't believe that is Christians. I mean, homosexuality is damning you to sin. I mean, damning you to hell and all that did. But it was 4 of us on the panel, and all 3 of the other guests made it a point to let them know that was my stance, not their stance. So it made me start thinking, and like, well, do we? And that's what's so tricky to me. We living in a day and age where I talked about that at the drag show, but I also posted one Sunday or last Sunday where there's a church in Atlanta where the dude gets up and says, we want to thank God for our first man, the gentleman of the house. And the pastor gay in the first dude, they kiss on stage, in the pulpit, in the whole 9. And the crowd is, oh, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. That's the day and age that we're living in now, where the lines are so blurred. But just because it doesn't line up with my personal convictions, who am I to say that they're wrong? When Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I would draw all men unto me. That means there's going to be some homosexuality. There's going to be some trans people there. It might be even some atheists that might, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Who am I to say that is exclusively for people that believe like I believe? You know what I mean? I think that's a contradiction of what we say we believe when we talk about Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. What does the word say too? If I be lifted up, not just I'm gonna draw all Christians to me or people that believe like I taught, you know what I mean? I'm gonna draw all men unto me. So I think that's a part of the all. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, or you know what I mean? I don't really have an opinion on right or wrong. All I'm saying is you got to live according to your own personal convictions, and what your personal convictions is might not be mine, and vice versa. And I think a lot of times that's what get a lot of Christians in trouble. We measure everybody by what works for us, but our relationship with God is just that. Our relationship with God. I can't tell Sam that you can't go to Chicago because God told me not to go to Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's a blurred line. I think that we kind of get it convoluted sometimes. But I wanted to hear what people had to say about that, because a lot of people, like I said in the comments, a lot of people was disturbed. Oh my God, this is blasphemy. I pray they need to stop playing with God like that. Who said that they ain't playing with God? I don't know. I wasn't there.
That may be all they know, but you know, me personally, if I see something, I may not say it, but I'm thinking it. I'm being real. I'll be like, what in the world? Like, I'm starting to see a lot of clips of these pastors, right? They preaching. And there's one time, this brother, I think the lady may be his wife, but this sister walks up, I guess, to give him his Bible or something so he can start preaching. And then he's like, you know, everybody like giving up. And then as she walks up there, he's like, oh, Lord. You know, like.
I shared that one too.
and I'm thinking, okay, you know, maybe that's his wife. But then I seen one recently where the young lady is walking past, and you know, he said something, and then the congregation,
look at it.
Is it's like, and I'm sitting there like, yeah, I may not say something, but I'm gonna tell you, if I'm visiting that church, I won't be back.
And for me to be clear, some of this stuff, not all of it, but some of this stuff do be AI. So it's just for entertainment purposes, period.
But AI getting so good now.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of people be thinking that is real. It's like, no, I'm not. And I that's why I said I'm almost at the point where now I'm ready to turn my comments off on threads, because I'm like, You're not educating me, yo. You're wasting your comment because all you're gonna do is piss me off, and I'm gonna come back at you. But if I post something up that's AI and it says AI on the screen, I don't need you to tell me that it's fake. I know that it's fake. I found it funny, so I still chose to share it.
Mhm.
The fact that you're gonna waste your time to put a comment in here, talk about people how crazy we are to believe this, you just as stupid for wasting your time trying to educate us that it's fake. Well, we clearly know that it's fake, but it's still funny to us. Like the skit that I did with the lady in the one lady with the lady in the park, and she goes to the trunk to get a chair, a folding chair from Alabama. That's what I knew it was a skit because who would ride around with the white chair in the back of their trunk? You know what I mean? Well, why would
Yeah.
you be? Why would you be instigating hate and everything else? It's funny to me. If you don't like it, you don't have to listen. Like you talk about Kurt, like you don't have to. If you don't find the same thing that's funny that I do, you can keep on scrolling. That's your right. But don't waste your time coming at me because I got time for you.
Yeah.
But I thought that was real interesting. Like I said, the reaction that it was getting. I said I wanted to talk about that on the show this week too, man. You know, just and rest in peace too to my boy Cleto too, man. I know you always talk about it. You always talk about it on your other show. Y'all don't really watch Jimmy Kimmel, but his band leader passed away today too. 59, Cleto Esposito.
He passed away today?
Yeah, either
Oh,
today or yesterday, but it was
well,
recently.
I watch
59 years old.
now I watch Kimmel, but with all the streaming stuff, I just see clips now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
on YouTube,
Yeah.
but it's probably been like 7, 8 years that I actually watch the Jimmy Kimmel show or the Tonight Show, whatever it used to,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the way streaming has changed stuff. The
Yeah.
YouTube, like I seldom watch program TV.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is either Netflix where I binge watch like crazy, or or I don't watch the Stars Network. We have the app, and I don't watch like BMF every week. Me and my
Mm-hmm.
wife, we let half go and then we binge watch, or we'll watch like 2, 3, 4 episodes and then talk ourselves into taking a break. But I I I think he used to be to me like one of the funniest guys. I love his skits and everything, but I think he just began to get for me just a little too political to
Mm-hmm.
where yeah, you're saying a joke, but you're damning anybody who may not agree. Like I don't like everything Dave Chappelle say, but you best believe my jaws are hurting when I watch him.
Mm-hmm.
You, you know, so I just think, I I know he's going I think mentally he's going through some stuff, but I think his wife did an interview uh maybe about 3, 4 days ago, and she was talking about how they don't talk to members of her family anymore because they feel like if they voted for somebody that they're against humanity, and just some
Mm-hmm.
like, to me, people like that just need some dang on counseling. You need some dang on mental health treatment, or
And we see him every day.
like it's okay for people to think differently, but when you get to the point where you're intentionally like cutting people off, you're come on, like
Yeah. Nah, and I'm telling you, I've had that conversation, especially during this last election. I've had people tell me like, if somebody vote for Trump, then they just excommunicated out of my life, and I'm like, that's your right to feel that way. I'm never gonna feel like that about politics. Only time
yeah,
that only time I got a problem with is when that's your stance. You know what I mean? Don't tell me how I should feel, or don't tell me why just because. I always use the comparison because it's equatable to me. You know, people are
yeah,
like, well, you gotta choose, you gotta choose, you gotta choose. No, I don't want to get shot or stabbed.
yeah,
Like it's like you choosing one worse over the worst. Well, if you vote for Trump, you did it, I did it. That does not automatically make Harris qualified. because
Man,
I
the
don't believe
one
with Trump
the one
and vice
thing
versa.
the one thing that people would say, I would hear people saying, if Trump win the election,
I'm
we
moving.
going back to we going back to Jim Crow. If Trump win the election, women ain't gonna be able to vote or ain't gonna be able to drive. Like I'm like, come on now, don't be. If we make it through FDR and his racist self, if we make it through like some of the things we done made it through,
Hmm.
like people raising Cain about the guy who just won the mayoral election for New York City. I'm like, dude, if y'all made it through De Blasio, y'all definitely gonna make it through this guy.
I was waiting to ask you about that too, because you see he won. What were you saying about that? Him, if he won, he was going to turn it over into little something. I know that they say Israel cut him off already, and Trump was talking about he gonna cut New York out like the whole 50 states. Like he
No,
ain't giving us no money.
no president can do that. What they can do is
Exactly.
if a city that if a city receives federal funding, which most cities receive federal funding for crime. Like
Okay.
the cities with the most crime receive the most federal funding. The cities with the worst public education receive the most federal funding. That's why I think some of these cities want crime. They want low test scores
So they
so
can
they
get
get
more money.
more money. Like
Mhm.
it's about the bag. So if if like the CDL, for example, um, the transport this
It was good,
administration
Silla.
has pulled $150 million in funding from California because California licensed commercial drivers that didn't pass the CDL test, and they've I think last week somebody killed 3 people. Uh, a month before that, somebody, the guy was from Pakistan, the other guy was from Uzbekistan, like they're coming over here, and because they said they were a commercial driver, California is issuing them commercial CDLs, and then they're going off to other states. And if anybody has a CDL, you know that because it's a federal license, that if you get your CDL issued in California and you move to North Carolina, you don't, it's not like a driver license where you
Hmm.
have to take that written test for that state. It's a federal license. All states have to follow that same standard for commercial driver license. So
Hmm.
you hand them the CDL and you basically just pay for 8 years or whatever the duration of that CDL is, and that's it. You don't take no driving test, no written test. So these people are like, I think they said there's over like 6,000 CDL drivers at California license, and they found out they didn't even pass the general knowledge test, but they out here on the road with a 80,000 pound piece of equipment hauling stuff. So I just think, so that's why the administration, any administration can pull federal funding if they're not applying federal rules. Like any of those guys that failed their written test, guess what? They weren't supposed to get a CDL, not even a permit, but they got a full-blown license. So, and the governor even said she's not she's not she may do something to reduce the price of buses, but she's like, we ain't gonna cut off, like make it free. She's like, I gotta sign off. The governor has to sign off on rent freezes. She's
Hmm.
like, how am I gonna put all these developers and people that own property out of business and freeze the rent? Like they have to maintain. And then the guy's talking about, well, if the landlords aren't upkeeping or to my standard, we're gonna seize their apartment building and turn it into a city apartment. Like he said a lot of good stuff, and if you watch him being interviewed, because he's a Shiite Muslim. You got your Sunnis,
So
and then
yeah.
you got your Shiites. And I think 90% of Muslims are Sunni.
Hmm.
He's Shiite. A lot of the Muslims that are in Minneapolis, they're Shiite. Um, Dearborn, Michigan. You've heard me talk about
Yeah.
them. They're Shiite. They're like the minimum, but they tend to be more extreme.
Okay.
Like they can kill their wife and it shouldn't be against the law. They can marry a 9-year-old, consummate the marriage, and it's not against the law,
Mm,
even though they're here.
mm,
So I think what if you start seeing for anybody in New York, if you begin to start seeing more people praying in the streets, they're Muslims doing their prayer in the street. When they got mosque all over New York, the only reason why you'll see somebody doing their prayer in the street, that's how they assert their dominance. They stop traffic. They cut. You got mosque to do that. And like Dearborn, they started mounting speakers all over the city and doing their call to prayer five times a day,
mm,
starting at 5:30, and the last one ending at 11:30, keeping people up. But they're protected because they're saying it's their religion,
mm,
even though being a Muslim is not a religion, it's a culture and a civilization.
mm,
But they use our laws to gain access to to get special permission to do certain things.
yeah,
They use our freedom of speech, our First Amendment, to stop traffic and pray in the streets.
mm,
Keep people late from work, from picking up their kids. Now they got to pay $1 per minute overtime because they late getting a daycare to pick their kids up. So I think what he did was he used a playbook that some politicians do. You just promise a lot of free stuff and people will vote. But I
mm,
said that election didn't reflect New York because in the boroughs, I think in New York City, it's 8.5, 9 million people, and only less than 2 million people voted. And he only got a little over 1 million votes. So only 1 out of 8 people supported him. But a lot of people didn't vote. You follow what I'm saying? Like
mm,
it wasn't I tell people you can't measure certain things based off of that election because it wasn't even a midterm in 2026. It was a small election. That's the reason why you only had 1/8 of the people show up to vote. Now if it would have been like 4 million, even 5 million that voted, and he won by he won with 2 or 3 million votes, then that's a different story.
mm,
But a lot of people just didn't go because you look at the number of, like I said, out of 8.5, 9 million people, less than 2 million voted.
yeah. Same thing
So
in Jersey because it was a big deal about Jersey. It's like I try to keep up with it, but I don't keep up with it as much because it don't have no bearing on me. I just like to know who the governor is when I visit. But I was seeing a whole bunch of back and forth off of those two candidates. The Cheryl, I can't even pronounce old boy name, and he just gonna be a puppet for Trump, and he wound up losing though. But a lot
I
of times,
mean, that's the thing. And people like say certain things. I said, New York is a blue state. Jersey is a blue state.
is
California is
it?
a blue.
I think Jersey more Republican than it is. I think Jersey more
No,
red than it
no,
is.
Jersey is blue. We spent a lot of time. Jersey is blue. It is blue. It is as blue as my last name. But the the
Yeah.
thing i- the thing is like the only states that are in question of if they're red or blue are the swing states. That's it. And right now, I think there's only 7. There used to be like 13, but now there's only 7. But and I think that's Arizona, Nevada, Minnesota, Michigan, um, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and it's one more. But those are the only ones that aren't like North Carolina is a red state because the last time a Democrat won North Carolina was Obama's first term. But to them, he that they're talking about the affordable care. that was so bad that he lost his when he ran, when he ran for reelection, he lost by a whole lot to Mitt Romney. And basically it's because all people found out all the hidden costs with, the Obamacare. You, you know, um, the keep your same doctor, keep your same plan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people lost their plan, or their doctors were not over. Like if we sign in, we may get like 7 to 8 different options. Now our son, who makes well above what we do, he signs in and he has over 100 options. So that's the thing. Like everybody was supposed to be able to keep their same stuff if they were happy with it, and it was also supposed to pay for itself within 5 years,
And it
which it
also gave the
did.
doctors right to refusal, right?
What you say?
I said it also gave the doctors the right to refusal, didn't it? Like you might want to keep them. They can say, "Well, we ain't carrying you no more."
No, I don't think it did that. But what it did was it started to, because the healthcare companies were now getting a confirmed set of money,
Mm-hmm.
billions of dollars, no matter what, because they said there's over, I think they calculated it's like 25 million people out of the 25 million people that signed up for it right now. There's like 12 million that didn't even know they had it until they received the call. So it was coming, they was under it, subsidies and all that stuff was being paid for them, and they didn't even know they had it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think like all the waste, but the main thing was it was supposed to pay for itself within a certain amount of time. And it didn't, because you see they're still trying to extend it, but healthcare out in Forsyth, Guilford, Orange, Hoke, Cumberland, Wake County, what you see going up everywhere? Hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the business. So they don't want people to do well, like as far as health wise.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of stuff now is coming out that they kept from, like autism and stuff. They had a medication for almost 20 years that could reverse autism in kids that were like nonverbal,
Mm-hmm.
or they couldn't hold good conversations. It was the blockers, and they've had a medication. But the thing is, do we release this medication so people it can be reversed? And then guess what happens?
Back, yeah.
There's no more occupational therapy, no
Mm-hmm.
more speech therapy, talking about one
Yeah.
child. They lose so much money in billing
Mm-hmm.
if they fix this kid.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. I said remove the politicians out of it. Remove the parties out of it. It's about money.
Mm-hmm.
Like they tried to put up the vote the other day. If people in Congress, if the government is shut down, people in Congress don't get paid. Guess what? It ain't even make it past the first thing. So it's like it's about. I tell people it don't matter what your party is. It's about money. It's about what these lobbyists, these companies, and all them people pay. That's all they care about. That's why all these Congress people, no matter what side you on, the starting salary for somebody in Congress is 175,000 a year. They still pay taxes. They have amazing health care and all that stuff, which is paid for. Like you make $175,000 and you have free health care. What sense does that make? The ones who should have free health care are the ones that's making 30, 40, 50, 60,000 a year.
That's America for you.
So that's what I tell folks, like stop trying to be about this party and that party. It's about money.
Mm-hmm.
They want people to be sick, because the more people that's sick, the bigger things happen. Now you're gonna have people starting to kick out because the GLP-1s. The owner was just at the White House that created the company, runs the company, said that right now people are paying $500 to $1,200 a month to get those shots. He said by signing this, we're making we're investing $4 million. We're gonna double the size of the plant in North Carolina, and now we're gonna lower the cost to $50 a month. You know, like,
$500 to $50.
yeah, because it only cost them like 50 cents to make one
Yeah,
dose. You know, like
you
it don't
already been making money on, like,
they
like we talking
making.
about NIL. Yeah,
So what they doing is, instead of making trillions, they're making
settle for billions.
a lot of billions.
Yeah,
And the thing is like, he said, now don't get me wrong, our shots is not the cure all for weight loss. Our shots are designed for people who work out, they're active, but they just can't seem to drop weight. But they're like, we also need people to drop weight, because when you drop weight, you tend to move more, you have more confidence. You know, it's not just physical, it's mental. You have less back pain, less
mm-hmm.
knee pain, things like that. So they're like, we need to keep people from going to the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
these chronic illnesses. So that's what I'm like, who wouldn't want that? Like, regardless of who puts it in place and all that stuff, like, there's a reason why next month Coke starts distributing their new Coke with sugar cane in it versus that high fructose and all them chemicals. Like, who wouldn't want to be healthier? Because all the stuff they got here to make us sick is illegal in Puerto Rico, China, Asia, Russia.
Paris, Venezuela,
Yeah,
all these
Europe.
places. Yeah,
But they feed it
Europe.
to us because they need us to be sick.
Mm-hmm.
So because they'll keep taxing us. So that's what I tell folks. Stop focusing so much on that the woe is me slave train of politics, with these politicians, and be unbiased. Like you said, you like to, when you look at our podcast and we talk, everybody will say their spill, but what do most of the time normally I do? I cite a source.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, go here instead of worrying about what CNN or Fox News is saying. Look at the actual site. Like, everybody was talking about, oh, they focus on this, but when they gonna release the Epstein files? On last week, I was like, they released 43,000 pages. How many of those pages have you read?
And not to mention the fact that everybody, I keep saying that a lot too. When they gonna release it, if I'm not mistaken, they had been released them before, but it ain't like you gonna find out anything that you didn't know already anyway.
Oh, no, I got to download it to my computer. They got the site where you can download them, and I've been going through it. When they first released it, it was about 10,000 pages on the first release. Then in September, they released 33,000 pages. And what they did was, the only thing that's redacted are the victims' names. And everybody's is like, well, why don't they just release all 200,000 pages? They can't, because there's an investigations. There are a lot of investigations still going on.
But
Like,
I'm saying,
people,
wasn't a lot of that public information when he was actually on trial?
no, a lot of the stuff was redacted. And this is the other thing. A federal judge in Boston, when they tried to get the Ghislaine Maxwell transcripts from the trial release, Congress and the Senate didn't block it. The federal judge that Bill Clinton appointed blocked it. Because his thing, he blocked it, was, he's like, because it would risk danger of the victims. Like, people don't understand, like, there's over 100 pending investigations right now. So if they release all this evidence, which is basically discovery, guess what's going to happen to all them investigations? They're going to be a mistrial, because they release all this information. They say they tainted the jury, they put out this stuff. So they can't release everything all at one time. They're going through it to redact victims' names. But what I tell people, when they had 12 of the victims do a press conference a couple months ago, and they said, we will say the names, we will create our own list. Where's that? Why haven't they threatened to release the names? Matter of fact, you had a dang on press conference with the dang on nation watching. You could have said the names right there.
Mm-hmm. But
Why not?
that's what I'm saying. A lot of time, because I could have swore his trial was on court TV.
Look, they waiting for that Netflix special or that
Yeah,
multi-million-dollar Netflix story.
because like I said, they keep talking about everything was sealed. But if you watch the trial back then, a lot of people wasn't on it. But a lot of this stuff you could actually see it during the trial. That's why
No,
I knew the Giselle Maxwell chick. That's why I knew
no,
about her.
they on Epstein's, it was no cameras or nothing in that one. But guess what else
The
was happening?
his trial was on TV, court
No, I'm
TV.
telling you, it was not. It was not. But guess what trial was on TV? Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Mm-hmm.
That was the smoke screen. That was the entertainment to keep everybody, because it's a lot of folks that went to the only ones that the dang on victims had confirmed was on the island was Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew. Like, they was asked about Trump, they was asked about Joe Biden, they was even asked about Hunter Biden, and they was like, we never seen them there. So my thing is like, don't
Yeah,
just
because like who trial was that? That's why I said I know I was watching something, one of them trials, and that's how I knew all the names. Prince Andrew, the chick.
well, that stuff like the reporters were in there, but they couldn't have any cameras or recording devices.
Okay.
So when they would finish the trial, the reporters would go outside and
Sort of like
they
the Diddy trial.
record everything that they heard.
Yeah, got like the Diddy trial.
And then you would get, okay, CNN would get it or Fox would get it, and they would disclose only what they wanted to disclose.
Got you.
But what I tell folks, and I've been following it. That's why as soon as those files dropped, I downloaded it to my computer. I can send you the link where you can post to send to people. Like, and I always ask people, it's been 43,000 pages. Like, you up there begging or yelling, release the files, and yet you haven't read one page yet of what's been released. So why are
My
you?
whole thing is it ain't gonna make a difference anyway.
Yeah, it's too many powerful people. When I say powerful people, I'm talking about politicians.
Yeah.
It's too many, and you got to think Bill Gates' wife came out and said that's why they got divorced, because he would not stop going. Melinda Gates said that. So my thing is like, look,
what difference is it gonna make?
yeah,
Trump name was on there. It
no,
get released.
this is the thing. Trump's name was on a manifest. And I tell people, look at the year that him and his wife was on that manifest. What year was Nelson Mandela released? You remember?
Was it 2000 and
Like 2001?
Yeah, 2001, 2, somewhere around there.
And guess who? No, it was 90. And guess who? Because Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson said that they would like get planes and flights to fly Nelson around the world to like spread awareness for apartheid.
1990, yeah.
So guess what happened when they backed out? They collected all this money, but when he got freed, they weren't nowhere to be found. Guess who let Mandela use his plane for free to fly his 88 staff members around to do what Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson said they was going to do? Mandela was flying around on a plane that had Trump's name on the side. So the thing is like when you millionaires, and you happen to be at an event in New York, and you got okay, this guy, okay, he's cool. He said we can use this jet. They'll fly us down to back to Florida. Like they were on those manifests. But Ghislaine Maxwell was a certified pilot because she was a pilot. That's why the judge froze her transcripts, not the Epstein. Ghislaine had her own flight manifest. She was the one who was flying people from the
Mm-hmm.
island to the States.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein, he wasn't in his files, is none of that stuff. So what people should be saying is they shouldn't be calling to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. They should be calling to release the Ghislaine Maxwell, because she was literally the only pilot that flew people back and forth from the island.
And
How
to
come
me, like I
people,
said, it's a waste of time anyway because it ain't gonna make a difference. It's gonna be what it's gonna be regardless.
it's too many powerful politicians that was there, and too many dang on billionaires. Like I said, at one point for 14 years in a row, Bill Gates was the richest man in the world. So you think they're gonna take him down, and then one of the girls just suddenly, the one that was in the photo massaging Bill Gates back on the plane headed to the island, she just miraculously committed suicide last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I just tell folks, like, don't follow these smoke screens. Start looking into this policy on what can help you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got autism. I mean, if you have a child with autism, you need to be looking up and talk to your primary care provider about your son or daughter getting access to this medication. Somebody having issues now, a medication that used to be 600 to 1,200 a month, now it's only going to be $50 a month. You need to be looking to see when it's coming down the pipeline, talking to your primary care so you can get back in shape.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be healthy to fight the fight. But I just think people, we focus as a community on the smoke. We focus on stuff that really, like we it's like we focus more on symbolism versus, like now
Yeah.
symbolism has become activism. When back then activism was actually action. It
Mm-hmm.
was more than just protesting. MLK was meeting with, you know, senators, presidents, you know, and when he started to gain the support of Jewish folks, that's when he got taken out.
Mm-hmm.
When Malcolm X was all black power this, only black folks, no white folks. When he changed, when he traveled to Mecca, he's like, man, I saw Chinese Muslims, Asian Muslims, white Muslims, blue-eyed Muslims. So he started saying, like, he started to unite people.
Mm-hmm.
What they do? They took him out.
And they started talking about equity, like you say too, monetary, not just equal rights, but
No,
monetarily
King
equal.
King King talked about equality,
Mm-hmm.
and Malcolm X spoke a lot about reparations. King had mentioned reparations because at the last phases of their life, they began to talk quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot of dialogue because they were a little bit more grounded. Prior to that, King didn't have a whole lot to do with Malcolm because he felt he was just, a black supremacist.
Yeah.
He just he didn't want unity.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is like I tell people there is a difference between equity and equality.
Yeah.
Equality is being treated the same, having the same access and all that. Equity is not necessarily the same up front, but we want to just show that we're investing money so we can have the same result. So let's say, for example, if me and you in school, I study like crazy, and all my grades are saying A's, A's across the board. You just focus on the Giants games, you know, and that's all you do. You don't study, and you barely pass your tests. You making D's and E's. Well, equity is when the end of the semester come, no matter how much work I did or how much work you didn't do,
You get
we both have a B.
mm-hmm.
And for me, I don't think that's fair. I think people should get rewarded for their work. If you work hard, your reward should be larger than somebody that don't work.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another thing. But that's the difference between equity and equality. King talked about equality, being judged by your character and not your skin.
Mm-hmm.
Equity is saying because of your skin, no matter what, we need to have the same result. And that's where, certain things I agree, but most of it I don't, because I look at where how I grew up, I look at some of my friends grew up, and I'm like, they busted their butt. And like you look at Jeff Bezos, he filed for bankruptcy 3 times when he started Amazon. Like, but now look at him.
Mm-hmm.
He closing the whole dang on city for his dang on wedding. So it's like, should he not reap the rewards of his hard work? Because when he filed for bankruptcy 3 times, it was him and his wife, not other people. So why should they get the rewards? When he did all the sacrificing? Because had Amazon failed, guess what? He would have been homeless on the street. The other people wouldn't. So I just think that we should be rewarded for our works. Um, but if somebody lazy and don't do nothing, I mean, it's almost like I see kids that's barely passing school, but then they got 150, $200 sneakers on. I'm like, you get rewarded for doing nothing. So why do good if you, no matter what, you still gonna get those retro 7s or 13s or 17s, or that PS5 or PS6, whatever version they're on now. Like I believe in rewarding people for their work.
No doubt. But man, we gonna get up out of here, man. Give me a little napping before I go in and hit this graveyard shift. But yeah, man, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, man. I appreciate you all, man. Again, let's keep everybody in prayer. Coming up on these holiday seasons
Yeah.
too, because a lot of people, um, they lost family members around the holiday season. So a lot of times the holidays are kind of difficult, a reminder, like we were talking about earlier. So let's make sure that we do go out of our way to support one another, pray for each other, invite somebody over for Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? Make sure that they got a place that they're not by themselves, just sulking. And a lot of times I know a lot of people like that. They don't like to be around people when they're in a bad mood, but sometimes that's what you need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Good company, good meal, good laughs, and things of that nature there. So let's be mindful of one another during these holiday season as we approach them. And again, I want to say thanks to everybody that ever served in any branch. In particular, thank you for your services on this Veterans Day. We really appreciate you. Because, like I said, we all have a role to play. Um, Fortunately, unfortunately, I wasn't my military wasn't my call, but I surely appreciate everybody that has. I have family members that benefited from it, many friends that benefited from it, and I don't take the services lightly. So thank you again. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm trying to lock in a guest for next week. Hopefully, she'll be able to make it. I met this young lady. She's German, and we got into this discussion about racism. The difference. She's been living over here now for a couple, or maybe 20 years, whatever. But she primarily grew up in Germany, and I was asking her about the difference in racism over there versus over here. It was a real interesting conversation. So I kind of wanted to come on here and talk about the difference too, in her personal experience too. So we're gonna try to lock that in. But I hope everybody has a good week, man. You guys stay safe this week. Stay prayed up and make sure, like I always say, let's stop taking everything for granted, and make sure we doing something valuable with the time that we actually have. So again, thank you, Sam, for joining us tonight again as usual. I hope everybody has a safe weekend. Know that I love you all. And as usual, in signing off, DeAndre and Lysa, know that Daddy loves you intentionally, but I also love you unconditionally. Till next week, peace.